I might as well start speaking now. I have a lot to say, and I guess Josh will be joining us soon, and we will be discussing religion and politics. Ho hum. Ah, Josh is here.
Anything we need to deal with before we start, or are we good to go?
We're good to go. We're live.
Awesome.
And have been for 3 minutes.
Awesome. You're one of the ones that starts the stream and hopes it works out, and even if it takes 10 minutes, which is fine, by the way. I remember that being way more common, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be all these, intros and outros, and yes.
So I mean, we can just always expect people to just scroll ahead, right? I mean, it's not hard.
I mean, they have that option.
Yeah. Okay, so Claire, my lovely Claire, we have been commenting at each other like nobody's business, right? You've caught me. You got me fresh off Chris Howard. What shall we talk about?
Well, we should be talking about methods of discourse. I guess I did say a few things there that maybe I should try and explain or excuse myself. Or I mean, I felt Tanji wanted to say something. Did you hear that bit or not?
Well, do you mean before he left the stream?
The Italian, the one you didn't get on with, who didn't quite like.
Oh, it's not that we don't get along. I think he just wants to save my soul, and I'm talking about things differently.
Yes, I know he's very Christian, but he's also quite troubled. Did you get the impression?
He seems quiet and inward, shall we say? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's saying things are not going well for Italians or Norwegians.
I see. Well, my understanding is Europe is in a bit of strife at the moment. I mean, it might get worse.
Well, I mean, we just have crazy politicians who don't care about us. I mean, there is a war in Europe, and they're ramping up and borrowing heavily to, go to war with Russia in 2030. That's what they're working towards. I know Americans.
It's very arguable. I think you're probably right. I mean, there's no way that there will be a global conflict that doesn't involve Russia, and I'm very concerned and fairly sure we are headed to a global conflict of some sort.
Yeah, but the Yanks, they don't care. Another day, another, shithole country we bomb. We just don't give a fuck because we do.
The Yankee attitude towards death and war that isn't their own is pretty damning. Let's put it in those terms.
Yeah, and TLC is exactly that. They don't want to talk about it. They're just going to carry on talking about their, chit chat and whatever. It's like it's nothing to do with them. But ultimately, your foreign policy is going to bite you on the bum, and all this.
Your own religion would predict as much.
Tucker Carlson, it's like, yeah, I have to talk about it because it's important. But let's still sneer at Tucker Carlson. Let's assume that no, nice middle class person who's a liberal parent likes Tucker Carlson. Because he's questioning Israel, right?
Yeah.
So now
I can actually appreciate Tucker Carlson. I'm not in any way gonna send him as the be all end all, but I don't think the sincerity there is actually completely fake. I also think he has pretty interesting choices in guests and pretty interesting choices in conversation topics. There's actually no denying that. What would you say, Claire?
Well, what Chris Howard does is Tucker Carlson. And so does PVK. They do it all the time. Maybe I read between the lines too much. I mean, I do listen to them, and I do read between the lines, and it's all middle class sensibilities. We're too high above, the cattle class to care what the hell they think. We just. And there are some cattle class people, in the TLC, and they don't want to, antagonize, the coastal elites. That's what it is. I mean, you can be in flyover country, but still think like a coastal elite. And this is basically boomerism. I mean, to be honest, my mother has these tendencies. It's like, we don't talk about these things. We don't complain about the government.
Don't talk about religion and politics. I remember that old chestnut. It's kind of gone now, but People used to talk about it when I was a kid.
Yeah, and with enthusiasm, and like, of course, this is what grown-ups talk about. Grown-ups talk about this
Hmm.
sort of thing, and maybe if you
Yeah.
learn a few things, you might take an interest in it when you grow up, kind of thing. But now it's, I mean, I talk to Australians who say I'm just online because my wife won't let me talk about these things, at the
Yep.
parties that I pay for, the family reunions, the barbecues, or whatever. Can't talk about
Mm.
these things anymore.
Have you ever heard of the Franklin? Or he was also a reactionary
Yeah.
expat at one
He
time.
married a
Yeah, you know?
Chinese wife, right? He married.
Taiwanese, yes. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And he's an interesting character. I listen to a whole bunch of his streams. I would comment to him too. And this is also a fascinating part of the story of how I was aggressively kicked out of the dissident right, like very forcefully.
What was
It
your
didn't quite.
sin?
Oh boy. When Trump does something dramatic and attention grabbing, everyone accepts it because he's a born billionaire and the president, right? When I do something attention and grabbing and dramatic that I actually think is not so impossible to understand, but looks a bit dark as well as cheeky. That's an interesting combination sometimes. Very Australian combination, by the way, dark and cheeky. And I was posting some of this stuff online. Little fragments of videos, little moments. Like, it's hard to explain what I was doing, and indeed it was misunderstood by the dissident right because they have no bloody imagination. Anyway, do you know what basket weaving is? Did I talk about this already?
No, but I know basket weaving is, generated the term basket case for lunatic, right? It's therapy, right?
I
It's
mean,
it's
basket weaving is like the
displacement
dissident
therapy.
right meetup group, essentially,
Well,
right?
I mean, what I've noticed is that what you said about people hating you, it's because
Yeah,
you're smart, you're
that's a
focused,
bit of it.
you ask
That's a bit of it.
questions that they can't
That's a bit of it.
answer,
That's a bit of
and
it.
and it's like, how dare you? Who do you
How
think
dare
you are
I?
to tell us what to do? Just because you're smart and focused, and
So,
a lot of it
someone
is like
said, "Who
that.
do I think I am?" To this today. Today they said that to me, and I could just take it. I was like, "Yeah, I'm Josh. Hi." And and the funny thing was, it's not like we even had a big fight about it because I'm pretty used to it at this point. Who do you think you are? You have no standing. You're not an elected representative. You're just some punk. You're just blah 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 who thinks he's so clever. You think you're the real Goodwill Hunting, baby. I'm the real fucking Andy Dufresne. And that's because I've been to prison. And I sang the opera in prison myself. I didn't use no record player. That's
Can you
another
tell us
story worth telling.
what it was that you was in prison for? I'm sure everybody would be interested.
Oh, and of course, you know how I was talking the other time about the right man for the right hour who has a bit of a dark backstory.
Mm-hmm.
I am talking about myself here. There's no point in covering that one up.
Mm-hmm.
So prison, I've been to prison twice, both for arguably political acts, and even acts that, dare I say, resemble terrorism. But not what you're thinking. Okay, first time around was 2017, and I did. I will put it in unsympathetic terms. Okay, I was charged with using a carriage service to menace, which in Australian law could call for 5 years or something like 20. They multiplied the charge 4 times. It was all 5 years. Am I serving these consecutively, concurrently? Fucked if I know. Sorry, Australian law is really
What is this
complicated.
offence again?
Sorry?
What is this? What is this offence? What was something
I
about
rang
carriage?
up the Australian Security and Intelligence Organization and led them to believe that I was doing something drastic, but it was indeed a hoax, the point of which I would describe it this way. I wanted to set up a showdown with my own society. Again, very flamboyant, very over the top. I am more reasonable than this, but at the time I was dealing with a lot of personal issues, as well as pretty outraged about a lot of things. Would you believe climate change was on the agenda? But let's leave that because I know that's not a popular topic for the dissonant Reich and perhaps yourself. I don't know. Anyway, I really messed with ASIO. I really got a heavy charge.
The what? You said, what was the acronym you just mentioned?
The Australian Security and Intelligence Organization, our CIA, to put it stupidly. They're part of the Five Eyes network. You know about Five Eyes, right? Mm-hmm. Five Eyes intelligence sort of alliance thing. Yeah. So I never really heard from ASIO again. They certainly didn't want to acknowledge that what happened. But
what did you do exactly?
Well, I just rang them up and led them to believe that I had a bomb at Flinders Street Station. Okay, that is a very excessive thing to do. I admit to it. Okay. It was wrong. There's more to the story, of course. Anyway, I mean, look, the left and the right are all, especially the extreme left and the extreme right, are all about necessary sacrifice. Do what it takes. Power. We want power. Revolution. Blah blah. How do you do it as one lone man, which was all I was at the time? And I figured, look, I don't really know what to do at this point. I just figured throw myself at it like it was all I was trying to. Oh, look, it just takes too long to explain everything about it. Anyway, I'll try and move the story forward into like the prison and stuff. So I was charged with this whole use of a carriage service to menace, which is just kind of incomprehensible jargon too. You made pretty dramatic threats over the phone. Sorry?
Okay.
And to the cherry on top was I was actually in Flinders Street Station, the central hub of metropolitan Melbourne public transport, as I was talking to ASIO. And I was taken away by the police. And they didn't know what to make of me. And the whole thing turned into a fiasco and a farce. The police tried to handle it poorly. Sorry?
How old were you then?
I was in 2017, so I would have been 25 or thereabouts. Mistakes of a young man, headstrong young man, all that sort of thing, right? In fact, no one got hurt except for me. And that was part of the idea. Let's put that in my favor at least. I requested the interview footage with the police, actually. And I wanted to see the moment where he pointed out that I could have caused a panic and I didn't like hearing that. And I don't mean that I got angry. I mean I got ashamed. But these are the difficult things you have to deal with when you have a troubled background. When people find out about it, they don't know how to react. But one thing I can tell you is if we're having a contest of who has conviction, I have some points to bring up in my favor. That not every, shall we say, disconnected politician born to the upper middle class or even the high class, they usually aren't high class actually. Politicians are the puppets of the high class, but let's move on from that at any rate. So anyway, the story goes, I ended up in prison under the sort of a legal term called remand. This means we're putting you in jail. We're going to process you, whole 9 yards. You've been charged but not convicted. You have been denied bail. Now in Australia, bail is really at the discretion of the magistrate or the judge, and not a matter of money. Perhaps that's preferable to the American system, but whatever. Anyway, I was denied bail and sent to jail. And I ended up going through quite a bit in prison. As you could imagine, in prison, you got to make a choice. Inmates or guards. I chose inmates, and the guards did not like that. And I took it pretty far, and they took it pretty far.
Sorry, what was this? What, inmates or what?
Oh, so like what I mean is you kind of side with the inmates, or you try to be a well-behaved sort of person, trying to side with the guards. Do you understand what I mean there? I mean, everyone chooses inmates in this equation, but it's because the inmates are the ones that are supposedly can really hurt you. They'll shiv you, they'll this, they'll that. Now, in the end, I was hurt by the guards, rather badly. In fact, I've tried to start a few investigations about it, but as if they want to hear about that. Anyway, they thought I almost died at one point from the combination of poor treatment and other things. So I was actually sent to hospital from prison. Like a proper hospital. And then I ended up in a place called Tom Assembling, and you guys can look that place up yourself in your own time if you're curious. And eventually, after about 4 months total from beginning to end with the whole prison experience, I was out on conditions of some sort of bail arrangement. I sort of managed to get my lawyers to work on that. And the final outcome was something utterly bizarre. Maybe it could only happen in Australia. I was granted a diversion with regard to the charges. You have any idea what a diversion means?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's usually the kind of thing you give for a really minor first offense, like a traffic violation or whatever. The thing is, I was facing like really serious charges, and they gave me a diversion. It was very weird. So, how did it go? So, as the prosecution realized something really wrong had happened in my case, they stopped showing up to the court mentions. Like, it was quite a clear development. After I got bail, they stopped showing up. So I would show up trying to be at least a little bit well-dressed, wore a nice shirt. They don't wear a suit because that's overkill. I mean, it's frankly overkill in Australian courts to wear the full suit, even for the lawyers. But that's another matter. So from there, I went to mention after mention, and the magistrates honestly started taking my side, including statements like, we were concluding, and the magistrates were getting increasingly noticing that the prosecution was not showing up, and that the matter was being delayed, and they probably had started to read about what had happened, and yeah, there you go. Yeah, and I didn't even get a criminal record from the whole thing, which also tells you something, right? Anyway, the magistrate said something like, we had the little discussion about however they handled it on the day. I don't even remember everything. But at the end, I said, thank you, Your Honor. And, I meant it because he seemed fair enough. But you know what he said? The last thing he said to me? He said, no, thank you. Like, what?
Oh.
I didn't even understand where this was coming from, honestly. My lawyer was baffled. He had never seen that before. And we're talking about a very experienced and senior lawyer. He ran his own medium to large size criminal legal practice. It was named after him. James Dowsley and Associates, for anyone curious. I can recommend him as well. Anyway, so the next magistrate, the whole thing appeared to do. This lady was angry, and not just about me. No, really. She was stating in open court, she was fed up with the way that modern Australian law was handling people. She was declaring that her intentions to resign as a magistrate because of how fed up she was. And she really laid down the smackdown on the prosecution, the police prosecution that wasn't showing up. She said, "You get someone." Like, I'm paraphrasing here, obviously. You get someone here, you get a discussion, you get a decision, and it happens today. That, I think, is why I was given the diversion. There you go. Now, technically in a diversion, I admit fault, which is fair enough. Okay, that's fair. But also at the same time, I'm in this bizarre state where I have no convictions. I technically have no criminal record, right? But I've just been through this bizarre fiasco for all people concerned. And it kind of makes me look a bit suspicious, if nothing else, to someone who doesn't understand the full story or the context, or the fact that I've really moved on from that sort of thing. And I have no intention to go back to that. There's so much more I could say, but does that satisfactorily answer your question? Because I don't want to just talk about this. We want to talk about other things too, of course.
Fine. We'll just go. It's you're the guest, and it's your show.
Oh,
and I just want you to get it off your chest.
That's a very fine thing to say, Claire, and I hope it's very entertaining for you, because I genuinely hope so. Because boy, howdy!
Yes, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't find it of interest.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. Yeah, you bring it up.
Because I know in those streams you just don't get to say what you want to say. They're going to cut you off. Oh, I have to go now. I've got to go to work. Chris's stream is about to. It's like,
I
well,
didn't have a problem
it's
with
not.
how Chris was running it. It was one of the best streams I've had with him so far, maybe the best.
Yeah, yeah. But I get the feeling like, oh, it's exactly 6 a.m. We have to go now because Chris is about, and it's like he hasn't even started it.
No.
So we could wrap up our conversation, but no, it's like I've had enough of you. So
Well, no, I
we're
didn't
gonna
get
go.
that vibe, but I know what you're getting at, right? You're getting at the 1 hour limitation, all of that,
Yeah,
right?
or
But
whatever it is, that it's like I've spoken to you for 1 minute now. That's all I can take. Off you go.
you know,
Goodbye.
you know, streaming culture is fascinating the way it's changed over the years. Like,
Mhm,
there's some guys that I like to follow. This is just a complete tangent from where we were at before.
mhm.
You'll probably would have never have heard of them. It's sort of EFAP and the Mauler crew and all that bunch who do a lot of cultural commentary on movies and video games and all of that. And
Mhm.
their attitude towards how long to stream is as long as it takes, whatever that means. Okay.
Yeah.
Every anniversary of their podcast show thing, they do a 24-hour stream.
Mm.
That's their
Oh yeah,
attitude,
yeah.
right?
I used
I
to know
like it.
people who do that and have
Yeah.
marathons and
Yeah.
Mm.
And and I also remember the early days of live streaming culture on YouTube, specifically political YouTube. It was way
Mhm,
more exciting than now it is. I mean, maybe
mhm.
that's just nostalgia but the discussions were thick and fast with enemies, allies, enemies talking to enemies. There were thrills and spills and cock ups and bad debates between SargonofAkkad and Christy Winters or whatever we want to talk about. I met
It was
Sargon.
called Internet Blood Sports.
Yeah, damn straight. I met Sargon extremely briefly once on a live stream. I think I only asked him one question. He was there at the invitation of some guy called Skeptor, who was like an Israeli who wanted to make a mark in the political space, whatever. I think he's long gone, but Sargon ain't. So what we had agreed to behind the scenes was this thing of doing something nice for charity for Movember. You know Movember?
Oh, but mustache.
Yeah, the
Um,
mustache.
yeah, to testicular
Raise
cancer
money
or
for
prostate cancer.
men's issues, cancer, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
We were making it more general, actually. We were making it about men's issues in a political sense, at least a little bit.
Good.
Yeah. That was an interesting era too. That you can probably find some remnants of if people want to dig deep enough. But
Mhm.
the thing there was that Sargon was kind of there to just start a fight with some guy calling himself American Anarchist. And this is
Mhm.
old Sargon of 2016 or something like that. And I thought this was poor form. And I thought the whole stream kind of collapsed because the initial intention was to do something fun together rather than talk politics. And the fun thing doesn't really matter at this point. But when we did this in the more left-oriented stream that had a bunch of leftist people who some are long and gone and some are maybe still around, I don't know. But they all engaged with the spirit of the entertainment proposition, and we had a really good time.
Mhm.
So this is why I'm just not ready to cast the left to the wind nor the right. I think there's redeeming qualities to be found everywhere. This is my
I
idealism.
reject the right-left classification anyway.
I do too at this point, anyway, because it's just, what is it even describing it anymore in a meaningful sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's designed to make us argue about who's right and who's left, and it's really about who has the answer and why, and people are just so easily diverted from the actual discussion, and
Mm.
also they don't really want to discuss a problem, and I'm saying I'm just trying to make it easy, because it's obviously a masculinity issue,
Mm.
and and probably a racial problem in the sense that white people have been marinating in the matriarchy for longer than any other race. So,
That's
um,
true.
so I don't entirely deny the reality of race. It's just that it can't it's not enough to make race your religion because I'm
No,
sure
I don't
people
find that
knows.
either.
Yeah, you can't immediately tell somebody if somebody's friend or foe just by the the color of their skin. I mean, he
No.
could be your brother or twin and still be hostile, or your parent or your child. So, you know,
I mean, to speak spiritually, I think that's what this great cataclysmic thing that we are already going through really is. Like, people are waiting for the moment that the missiles really start flying and the war is actually properly declared. I'm looking around and say the war has never ended. It's sort of like just reaching a very intense point, and maybe we can move on from it in the aftermath. But I think that's the nature of the process. It is as difficult as we make it, to some extent, anyway. And sorry.
I was agreeing with you, and
Oh,
there are ways of making
thanks.
it simple, and it is, to be, somewhat thick-skinned and not getting diverted, by insults and, you know, um, the usual malice that people
Hmm.
engage in to distract you. And then suddenly you find yourself in a slagging match when you were trying to make some quite important political point. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
people you know can't get over that.
yeah, I agree. I agree. The whole thing about being thick-skinned, like, I kind of figured that I never would cope with full-on internet blood sports as a big part of my life. Like, what I really mean by that is, yeah, I participated a bit, usually trying to do the right thing, but maybe sometimes I've erred. But what I mean by that is, if I ever became big time, like, how would I deal with it? Like, trying to give everyone their appropriate answers all the time in all situations, it would have destroyed me. These days, I probably do have that thick skin at this point. And the irony is, actually, if I may bring her into this, well, someone close to me says of me, for talking about my favorite topic myself, so forbidden. But someone said of me, I have a very high amount of, let's say, resilience, but also a very high level of sensitivity.
Hmm.
And some people fall too far into one or the other and neglect the other half.
Hmm.
For me, I've actually looked at it as the two can feed each other. If you're an ultra sensitive person and you withstand the consequences of that, it will make you tough. And vice versa, you can use that toughness to go to a new level of sensitivity.
Hmm.
It's a very interesting process if you engage with it fully. I would not recommend it to the faint of heart, though. Anyway, as for
Yeah.
being thick-skinned in the sorry,
No, I was just going to agree with you. And
yeah,
one of the things I know I posted in Chris Howard's live stream is the endless chit chat. And I was just,
Hmm.
I did say, look, if you're going to say something interesting, maybe you don't want to give away too many details of yourself.
I
And
don't mind though. I think it all mixes together into an even more potent cocktail for my purposes.
yes, I mean, you might want to give some detail, like, I know because I was in that situation, kind of thing. But you
Hmm.
know, the endless chit chat, well, is boring. Well, to me, I suppose it's like, let's get to the
I,
meat of the sandwich, and not be going through all the
I
fluff.
mean, Claire, on the one hand, I've learned to embrace the chit chat a little more than you. But at the same time, if I may be that guy, that jerk, when people are talking about people I don't know and their little relational things, and it's all like sentences that I've heard before and the names have just been changed around, I can't keep my interest. I'm sorry, guys. Like, you know what I mean, right, Claire?
Of course, I do.
And
So
this is in person as well as online.
yeah, and also you're making yourself vulnerable because anybody can listen to your details, your children,
Mm.
so and why would you be doing this? Haven't you got any real life friends? And I guess the answer for some is no. That's why I do this. Oh,
I
fine,
mean,
right,
I
okay.
funnily enough, PBK kind of thought I was a bit of an isolated sort of internet, forever online, forever alone. Like, this too far. He was quite fair to me, really. He just sort of asked me some questions and made some points regarding this. I maybe took it too personally. It's fine. I love PBK. He's a great guy for what he is. I still think he's a great guy. Anyway,
Well, yeah, yeah.
um,
Yes, he certainly wins them, and he can get all these people who don't like each other together, right? And that's quite a skill.
yeah,
And
he's
I'm
quite
very
good at it.
happy to give it
It
to him.
is.
Mm.
And he has the boomer version of that. I have the rough and tumble young version of that. And I think it's been a hell of a lot of fun so far.
Mm.
What was my point about PVK? So I actually have a lot, and I'll admit that I was once way more isolated, sure. But as you might imagine, I find it tough to find people of my own who are. Some of it is I put people, and some of it is they put me off. I think, look, you're not interesting enough for me. I don't know what to do here. I have actually moved on from that a lot, though. And I have a lot more friends from a lot more different backgrounds with a lot of differing levels of intelligence and life experience and all of that, right? I do genuinely appreciate all of them.
I mean, so do I. I don't have to talk politics with, anyone outside, the internet, because I get to talk it, online. So
you exercise your demons out here, right?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But
I love talking to you, Claire.
It's about these things more, because a lot of it is, people aren't going to act on it, and a lot of people just spurg to get it out of their system, and it's like no, but a lot of what you say can be actioned, but only
up in future, especially
in the same room. Sorry,
would you? Brought up in future, particularly, right? Something you said so long ago. And, the more you said it as if it wasn't going to be brought up in the future, the worse it is when it is brought up or something like that. Actually, sorry?
I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. What I told you so? What?
No, actually, I'm going to use a political example, but I also want to say something about women with regard to all of this. Our favorite topic, Claire? Anyway, the political example of this is a really funny, interesting incident from Australian political history. It happened and then it went away instantly, okay? So what happened was a journalist, a sneaky, wily journalist, was ambushing, I don't think he was the current prime minister, but he was prime minister at one point. And that is a man named Tony Abbott. Now, Tony Abbott had been filmed speaking with some soldiers. I even think he was actually in like Iraq or Afghanistan or something. I think he was there, and they were talking to him about someone dying. And his response was, shit happens. Now, this was not, shit happens, whatever. It was, shit happens, which is actually a very Australian way of processing that.
He was a conservative, so he had to be given the treatment, right?
No. I'm really honing in on the scene itself. He didn't mock it.
No, I know. I accept that.
No. Okay. Well, what I'm saying is the journalist showed him the footage, right? And you could see on Tony Abbott's face, he was terrified. His political career was dead right then and there. Or something like that. He couldn't speak for like 20 or 30 seconds. It was remarkable footage. You've got to look this up, or at least someone in chat should. It doesn't matter. Look. But here's the thing. The military very promptly came out and defended him and said, look, this is language that we think is fair and fine. We don't have any problem with it whatsoever. This is what we would say. Yeah.
I mean, this is the stupid shit that women go, he just said that. That's all. There's no feelings,
Well, the women weren't really a part of this debate. This was male territory. Okay.
Exactly. He was talking to men in the military, and he was reflecting their ethos back to them.
Yes, he was. He was.
Are expected to die for their country.
And this thing gained no traction at all. It was a big story and it went away. I think he went on to be prime minister, if anything. So the funny thing there is just the actual sincerity, both in the scene itself on the not the battlefield, but over with the soldiers, right? And the terrified reaction that was actually rather humanizing was it just completely fell on its face. Good, try again next time, Mr. Sneaky Journalist. And anyway, I always remember it. Now, Tony Abbott was not a guy I was very fond of at the time because I was on the Labour side. I was. And Tony Abbott was on the Liberal side. Remember, for everyone out there, Liberal means centre-right in politics. Yeah, of course. And
Not
the
many
boring
people
kind
know
of
this,
conservative
though.
too. No, they don't. It's completely well known here, not well known anywhere else. Anyway, moving on. There was another thing. We were speaking of things being brought up from way back when. Like another quick example that I don't even need to go into is the Trump grab him by the pussy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't sink his career now, did it?
Because there were enough men who didn't care. Right.
Oh no, I was remembering a couple of women who were bold enough to say, "Grab me by the pussy, Mr. Trump." Like that was a thing as well. Do you remember that?
No, I missed that bit.
Oh, that was a few very edgy, like middle-aged milfy types who were just having fun, right? Trying to defend their favorite guy. But here's again the funny thing, and I think you are a little bit based with regard to this. The relationships between men and women are very complicated, and they're not for the faint of heart or the foolish to fully understand. Okay, there's a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was agreeing with you. I made some noise of agreement.
Every now and then I try too hard to let other people in, and I also make all the agreement noises, and I know sometimes it stops people and sometimes they just keep going. It's fine. Anyway, moving along. The women thing, women have a bit more of a reputation for bringing up certain kinds of things at just the wrong moment to trip someone up and, play the victim and all of that. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right, Claire?
Yeah.
I mean, guys have a version of this, but it's actually much more serious. It's like, we made a promise of loyalty that was based on this, and you betrayed that. That's serious, mate. That's how we would handle that. Because women get all hysterical, like, oh my God, you don't really care because you didn't pick up the cheese from the supermarket. Oh my God. Like, you know what I mean? You're the bigger enemy of the matriarchy than I am, but I've had my run-ins with it too. Anywho, the thing that I think I want to say here is bringing up your past sins, never really forgiving them, all of that, right? I'm sure there's a forgiveness doctrine in Islam, for example, right, Claire?
Well, it exists in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam because of the story of Jonah, redemption. You say sorry, and if you really mean it and won't do it again, you are forgiven. That
One
is
of the big
based on
problems.
it.
One of the biggest problems is people do it again.
Yeah, and then you say, that there's something called three-time loser, three strikes and you're out, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, even the cutting of the hand verse in the Quran, it does say, if he says he's sorry, don't cut his hand off, right?
Interesting.
I mean, they all, the, all these horrible punishments are accompanied by the option of mercy. But obviously,
discretion and
doing
mercy.
it, he's done it 10 times already. Then I think you can conclude that he wasn't really sorry.
Interesting. Did you ever hear of I'm just taking a stab here. Did you ever hear of the show? What was it called? It was about laundering money. It was about it was called the one with Jason Bateman. I'm fishing for it here. But it doesn't actually matter. There was an interesting scene very early on in it, right?
I haven't heard. I don't know the name.
I can't remember it right now either. But there was an interesting scene about this thing that we're discussing about forgiveness and like being hardcore about it, or should you be more merciful? All of that, right? So this mafia, the cartel guy, I think actually confronts these. Let's just call them accountants who have been laundering his money. Okay, and the Jason Bateman character is one of them. So Jason Bateman did not know about the thing that the cartel guy is so angry about, okay? The cartel guy has figured out that the accountants are they're skimming, basically, right? They're skimming more than agreed to. And he's right. And like about 3 of them confess. And they're like throwing themselves at their feet. Oh my God, please give us mercy. We'll never do it again. We'll pay you back. Blah, 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 blah. And Jason Bateman's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And Jason Bateman is like, he's much more serious. And he's also smarter than the rest, okay? And he knows there's no mercy here. Like, this is a cartel, dude. What are you guys even bothering with here? He thinks he's going down. He didn't know about the skimming because he's not dumb enough to do no skimming with the cartel. He was fine with the arrangement as it stood. At least that's my impression from the show. Anyway, so the cartel guy is about to kill them and shove them in barrels of acid, right? And he's going around to the other guys and he tells them all this story, a parable, if you will, from a cartel guy about how his father had a small business, and then he discovers one day that one of his workers is stealing from him. And the worker is like, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I don't know why I did it. I had all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. I only did it the one time. I'll never do it again. Now, the cartel guy's father was like, I don't believe you. Off you go. No, actually, no, but before he did that, he actually asks the accountants one by one, what should my father do in this situation? And they're all trying to beg and plead, like, why not show a bit of mercy? She only did it once, and they know they're begging for their lives here, and they're not doing a good job of it. And finally, he arrives at Jason Bateman, and Jason Bateman basically says this: look, your father would be right to get rid of her because it's not the first time she's stolen. That would be his assessment of the reality of the situation. Ozark, yes, seeking genuine has it. And that's logical. That's cold. It's logical. It's not all about the forgiveness and all that stuff, but it's reasonable, and it's facing reality. And the cartel guy, he kills the rest, and he doesn't kill Jason Bateman. And he says, "Look, I don't even remember what he says, but in my mind, this is what's going on. Jason Bateman has been at least trying to make the case he had no idea the skimming was happening, right? And the cartel guy is like, you basically belong to me now if you're going to live. I don't really know if you knew about the skimming or not.
No, I never saw the movie or whatever. But we're just talking about the general idea of forgiveness and redemption.
And punishment as well. Punishment and why you believe people if they're sincere and all that, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you only believe them if they make you believe that they're genuinely sorry.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Or so, are they just waiting to do it to you a second time?
Exactly, right?
Harder.
And the Jason Bateman character agrees to a new arrangement where he is going to give everything over to making this better. He is going. Jason Bateman comes up with this idea out of nowhere that I'm just going to launder money for you over and over and over and over, and I'll just do it for the rest of my life. I don't care. It's just whatever it takes, right? That's where it's at. Okay. And the cartel was like, all right, you sold me some crazy plan about the Ozark. Go do it. Here's the money. And that's how the show starts, in essence, anyway.
Yes, but I'm just saying, in religious terms,
yeah,
there is the option of redemption.
There is kind of,
but I think a lot of Christians are particularly fatalistic about
How
it.
so? You might be right.
And people like Scott, it's like, oh, we're all going to go to hell, and we have, they separate justice from mercy, and it's like mercy is only possible under Christianity. Because
I don't believe that either.
No, I don't believe that, but this is what they've been to keep them Christian, right? Because if you're not even Christian, you're all you're going to go to hell.
There's no mercy for you.
Yeah. And of course, the Jews and Muslims were saying, well, it's a mortal sin to worship a man. We don't agree with it, but they haven't been able to, get it together to tell them in no uncertain terms that it's idolatry. And
do you think of Jesus as idolatry as far as Christians treat him?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's worshiping a man. It's anthropomorphism. Because if you think of the Greek pantheon or the Roman pantheon, it's all about worshipping a man or a woman,
a person, shall we say?
Yes, a being. I mean, they don't all have to be human, but I guess in our minds, in the minds of people who are not that sophisticated, they just imagine God as like themselves, but with superpowers.
Yeah, I guess so. So to speak further on this, and I'm really glad you said what you said, because I really like this line of thinking on Jesus being idolatry. Like, do you remember what I said about like Christians treating the matter of Jesus rather slavishly, and God as
Well,
well?
I think it's a kind of ancestral memory that they inherited without, too much question. Because when Christianity was, firing on all four cylinders, people get burnt at the stake.
Mm.
For heresy, for denying the Trinity, for
Hmm.
all
They
kinds
really
of
wanted to
things.
push the Christ
Sometimes,
as divine thing, didn't they?
well, the Trinity requires Christians to believe that Jesus is co-equal, co-eternal, and
Mm.
co-substantial with God.
This is part of why I never actually got around to checking out your Urantia stream that was about half an hour, right?
I was just reading from Wikipedia, so just
Oh, okay.
waiting for
So you
you to
weren't reading
come.
the
So
text.
it was just a way of
Oh,
me
okay.
reading it without, while I was waiting for you, kind of
Well,
thing.
in all honesty, we could take a look at it in the course of this, if you would like to.
Well, I did read so far as the bit when it said that the Urantia book does talk about Jesus and his adventures.
Yeah, it does a lot, but actually, it might speak to you because it talks about these issues that you're bringing up: the idolatry, the Trinity stuff, all of it. So, um, and no wonder Christians hate me so much when I bring it up, because it actually solves a bunch of their problems, and they don't like the solutions.
What do you
So,
think is their problem?
okay. So, on the matter of the idolatry, right? I mean, your answer is pretty damn pro Jesus, but one thing that it says pretty clearly is Jesus is one son of God amongst many, many, many sons of God
Okay.
across the universe.
Hmm. Well, I mean,
Also, sorry, go
yeah.
on.
I was
So,
saying the Jewish and Muslim position is that God is not a man, and he does not beget son. He does not sire sons as men would, and
no,
and,
no.
and yeah.
And this is another thing that your answer is reasonably clear on. So, Jesus is like a bestowal from the divine, but there is no virgin, immaculate conception stuff going on.
The Quran
Joseph is
actually
Jesus'
accepts
father.
this.
Yeah, well,
The
look
Quran
at
says.
this. We're building rapport with me in Islam.
Mm,
Interesting, eh? So, uh, but what is happening in the case of Jesus is it is a bestowal of a being you could call Christ Michael, perhaps a reference to the Archangel Michael.
that was what I was thinking.
Okay, yeah. And here's another level to it. Michael in Urantia is discussed quite a bit. The specific Jesus Christ Michael that we all know and love, but also the fact that Michael refers to an order of what are called creator sons that I don't want to use the term rule over, but help to create and gain sovereignty. That's maybe a better concept here over what they call a local universe. Now, your answer was written before the terminology of universe and galaxy and all that stuff was more formalized. Okay.
Hmm.
So, for better or ill, some of the cosmology stuff in the modern astronomy don't line up well. But I have no idea what the real answers are there. I actually suspect your answer may be onto something, even in a scientific sense. One very interesting scientific matter that is addressed very directly, that is of interest to any cosmologists out there, is that it posits that space in the universe does, in fact, expand and contract. As in, you've heard of Big Crunch and Big Bang and all that, right?
Hmm.
So they're saying it's like a cycle of respiration growing over time. The actual age of the so-called time-bound finite universe is more like 100 billion years. Now, this would actually go some way to explaining a lot of very difficult readings in astronomy to square with the 13 point such and such billion year of the universe from the Big Bang. Okay. Another thing that is and like it's just because like even the scientists admit, like, so when we run the extrapolations backwards, we run into like this odd inflationary era in the Big Bang where it just expands more for some reason than any laws of physics can account for. And it's like, yeah, you just might be really interpreting stuff wrong there, guys. And also, furthermore, a Big Bang, Big Crunch, not like those things taken to their extremes, don't really work nicely for life. But if you had a creator or something in charge, whatever, it would probably set up a system like this: eternal expansion, but in a respiratory fashion. So you get expansion and contraction cyclically, growing the universe and its possibilities over time. That seems pretty reasonable to me. And boy, is it challenging the issue of, well, what is the universe? What are we looking at in the sky? Should we call it the firmament and say that the world is flat? I mean, I don't. Anyway, how are you liking this line of speech, Claire? You're rather silent, actually.
Well, I'm just sort of listening to see what you like about the book of Urantia, and
Yeah.
um, you could say that if there was a beginning to the universe, there will be the end of it to the universe.
The
And
end as we know it, or a true end of eternity? Because I wouldn't go that far.
well, I have heard the expression the Big Bang and then the Big Crunch.
Mm.
So I guess it could be like a yo-yo, which could mirror your respiratory analogy of getting
Mm.
big, getting small, getting big, getting small. But
With
but
overall expansion, by the way. But yes.
but if you accept the logic of there was a beginning to the universe, therefore logically and necessarily there will be an end. And the Abrahamic religions have an eschatology of the end
Mm.
times.
I believe in
When,
the
when
end
the
times
heavens will
in a
be
way.
rolled up like a scroll. This is
Ah,
an analogy in an imagery that the
yeah,
Quran.
imagery. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So well,
So I often throw Christians a curveball when I say I take the book of Revelation very seriously.
mhm. But I'm saying it's basically the same idea. I mean,
Yeah, it
obviously
is.
the competing Abrahamic religions would be saying our way is the best way, and if you're
Yeah,
Jew,
yeah.
you're better than the other two, etc. So we would have to, But I'm just suggesting that people come to it like a shopper. Like, well, what does this one do? What does that one
Mm.
do? And what does the other one do? Kind of thing, and
Oi.
maybe and I'm just compiling a consumer's guide of religion, of the
Yeah.
Abrahamic religions.
A consumer's guide, the travel agent stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because I think it's obviously silly if we just stick to the religion of mum and dad just because it's a religion of mum and dad. I mean, if we want to
Mm.
exercise our free will and our ability to uh, um, engage in moral reasoning, then and we complain about politics, we have to somehow um, come to a resolution about these things. It's like,
Yeah, resolution.
why are our politicians so corrupt and incompetent? Is it
Mm.
because they are being chosen precisely because they're corrupt and incompetent?
Oh,
And
I
if
believe there's
so,
quite a strong
why?
element of that. Oh, now we're getting into some slightly conspiratorial thinking. Do you want to go there?
Well, no, I'm just saying,
Oh,
people can say, a certain group is responsible, but it could be
yeah.
the outcome of some social and moral disease
That too.
that
That too
can be
could well be
cured.
part of it. So if I'll we can move on from your answer in eventually, but there are a couple of things that you were bringing up there that I thought would be kind of interesting to address
Hmm.
from that perspective of that book. First of all, it says almost nothing concerning eschatology. Maybe it's in parts that I actually haven't read yet, but it's very mum on the matter of the future.
Hmm.
It's very about clarifying the past and other details of the bigger picture stuff,
Hmm.
um, which is an interesting thing. I mean, more than once, the beings, the authors, whatever you want to call them, they will openly admit they don't know the answer to an interesting question, and they'll openly say, "We aren't allowed to talk about this."
Hmm.
Interesting, no?
Hmm.
Um, they will also talk about things like the Lucifer rebellion, which they acknowledge as a matter of fact. That it was very different than Paradise Lost, but also kind of similar to Paradise Lost. Again, if you read that section, it probably will tickle a bit of your political senses, because it actually sounds, as portrayed in the Book of Urantia, very much like a political issue, a rebellion, and a doctrine that Lucifer came up with himself that differed too much and got him in a lot of trouble. One of the very strange things about how the whole Lucifer rebellion was handled. Now, Lucifer was cooking
Could you
this at
tell
one
us
up.
about the Lucifer rebellion?
Oh, sure. So I remember some of that stuff. So again, this stuff is written from the loyal angelic perspective. So they're not very sympathetic to him at all. But they do say that he was treated with a lot of mercy, as I would put it. Given many opportunities to turn back, he kept insisting. Now, some of his contentions, which they reject, are things like, maybe there is no God, and the sons of God are using God as like an authority thing that they can point to so they can rule. So in a way, he's going directly after Christ Michael, our Christ Michael, with this stuff. Okay? Interesting. Now, again, interesting does not mean I agree here, but interesting means this is very different than what Christianity understands the situation to be. Okay.
What do you think Christianity understands the situation to be?
Oh, they don't know how to differentiate between Lucifer, the devil, Satan, or anything like that. Have you noticed that issue yourself?
I tend to think of Satan as Lucifer.
Okay, so in Urantia, Satan is specifically called a lieutenant of Lucifer that was loyal to Lucifer. Interesting.
Okay.
It's a claim. It's a truth claim that you could prove or deny depending on whatever, if we ever get the chance, right?
Okay, so is this claim scripturally supported?
In terms of old school
Satan,
scripture,
Lucifer.
I wouldn't think so. No, I wouldn't think so at all.
Okay.
But this is why I'm like, your answer is a bit of a breath of fresh air. It's making some claims. Sorry? Is it? Is it something worth arguing about?
Because it's not scripturally supported, and we'll never be able to prove it to our satisfaction.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'll get into some more interesting stuff than the subtle distinction between Satan and Lucifer. I mean, whatever that means anyway. Lucifer was considered a particularly brilliant angel of his class. He was responsible actually for many worlds. It's something like 600. Okay, so he was high up there. He was not all the way high up there. Certainly, Michael outranked him. But there were sons of God that outrank Michael, if that makes any sense. I mean, outrank. I mean, all the heavenly beings get along, are in perfect harmony and all that. I mean, that's all true. To a point. But there is an arrangement here, and he didn't like it, as in Lucifer didn't like it. I don't think that I'm going to try and claim Lucifer was right. I think, though, that there is more depth here than just Lucifer is wrong, always wrong, and there's nothing more to say. I have a suspicion the tension that we have here as mortals about presentation and duty and looking good and what you feel on the inside. It's that sort of issue that was happening with Lucifer. Like there was I almost sense like a strain in him as well as ambition. He was thinking of rising above his station, most definitely. And he did have like his weird declaration of liberty or something like that. Very, very American, you could almost say, funnily enough. But I should probably get off the topic of Lucifer because there's other things worth talking about.
Could I just quickly explain to you the classical Abrahamic God, the classical theory of the Abrahamic God anyway?
Please.
So the story that he's absolutely powerful and Satan only works for him, or the Jews anyway think of Satan as God's prosecuting counsel and his agent provocateur. right?
Sure.
And I think that this narrative is actually reflected in the Lord's Prayer, because there is a line that says, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." So, and if you're directing this plea to God, you are actually assuming that God does send Satan to tempt you into evil, to test your faith, I guess.
I have some sympathy for this. I do. Lucifer may well be a very specific being. Perhaps even Satan is. But even regardless of that, there is a bigger question of evil. It's much bigger than those two or anyone else. And that question is, I think, answered not at all dissimilar to the way that you put it. I think evil ultimately is a very unfortunate direction to go, but it is also a sneaky trap, in the sense that, well, you end up on the evil side, I guess, and you might do your business there for a while, but it is self-destructive, and it's all the other things we know about evil. and the irony is that you will probably be led back in the end, or face annihilation. That's if not annihilation, then at least a very painful process of coming back, which I think is a big part of the fear of coming back. Like, how much pain am I in for if I try to turn back?
Well, the pain is usually caused by our egos. It means, if you turn back, it means you're admitting you're wrong. And that is
Yes,
really the problem for most
yes,
people.
true. I mean, I could be considered a very prideful person, but I also have turned back.
Well, I don't think you've ever seen a picture. It's I guess you call it modern art, and I'll try and find it for you. And
Mm,
it's basically a very big-headed person carrying his enormous head on a wagon, and his puny little body pulling the wagon along. But the
yeah.
head is always looking skywards, so it can't see anything that goes around it. So I guess the
Mm,
idea is that, the head, this enormous head with a very thin neck, on this wagon, on this heavy wagon with a puny man dragging it, is going to go into a ditch or off a cliff soon, because
mm,
the head is not looking around. But if it was smaller and would fit onto the neck of a puny person, it
yes,
would, do better in, warning it of the man of danger.
yes, yes.
I'll try and find it for you.
Oh, of course, that'd be nice to see.
Hmm,
Um, you know what? I'll do some closing thoughts on your answer, and then let's never talk about it again.
sure.
Um, the spirit of the book overall is intensely logical. Like, it's much more logical than the Bible, which is funny because people are always accusing me of not being logical enough.
Mhm,
Especially in the Discord Bridges of Meaning, right, where I'm having a lot of
mhm,
my arguments with the Christians and the lot they're
mhm,
like. Um, so it's very precisely written, I find.
mhm,
It's also quite fair. It's trying to give answers, but it also gives plenty of leeway. That's a good picture.
mm,
I see what you're getting at. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it really doesn't mess around on the matter of sin. It really, really is trying to persuade you away from it.
mhm,
But it is also a much more flexible moral. How to put it? What was that thing that I said? And people agreed with me in the Christian place, but I mean, clearly there's also a problem because your answer isn't really in the business of giving out commandments. Their position on morality is more like you will have to figure it out yourself. That's part of the idea. But also, true moral decisions crystallize in their moment and context. Like, a bit of it is intuition, and a bit of it is figuring it out, and a bit of it can even be, thinking about some good rules and principles that you've heard before, and making a
mhm,
bit of a judgment call.
mhm,
But uh, the the matter of evil is not overwhelmingly focused on in the book either. It's a very optimistic book,
Mm-hmm.
much more optimistic than the Bible, and so far as I can perceive the matter. It
Mm-hmm.
talks about a universe just full of much better places than Earth. Earth
Mm-hmm.
is considered spiritually retarded, to put it
Mm-hmm.
in a blunt way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are reasons for this. We are in the area affected by the Lucifer rebellion. We are our planetary ruler, this fellow called Caligastia, is specifically sided with Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
The Adamic project failed for sexual impropriety reasons, as in there was an Adam and Eve, and they were sent by the celestial authorities, or however you should put it. They weren't the first man and woman, which kind of makes no sense in a way. They were actually here to uh, aid in our spiritual and genetic development. Very interesting. And they failed. They didn't fail completely, but they failed significantly, at least as the book puts it. And as a consequence of all these escalating like disasters for this planet, we are considered a total backwater. But to kind of demonstrate the heroism of Michael, who I don't think I'm not an idolater here, but I do respect what I am reading about this figure, especially if it's true. He came here, he was incarnated here, if you want to use the term incarnation. They prefer the term bestowal. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
As the child of Mary and Joseph, to really turn things around. It was the final bestowal. There were several before. It was probably meant to be considered the lowest bestowal, as in the lowest form of life his form took. It was also a really direct taking on of the challenge of the fallout from all this shit that had happened under his reign.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have not gotten up to the part where Jesus sort of, or should we call him Joshua? The book is very interesting in referring to the figure of Jesus. They will talk about him as Jesus kind of casually, and more often than any other term, at least while he's a man. But they will also call him Christ Michael if they're speaking of the broader spiritual being, the before and the after of Jesus. Okay. They will also, in interesting moments, refer to him by a more accurate name, something like Joshua ben Joseph. You can imagine that I this raises an eyebrow to me, because
Mm-hmm.
I know that Joshua is a more accurate name for Jesus than Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But let's not overblow that coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Not right now, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
As for what I draw out of the book, and like a real closing remark here, I'm just not done with it. I find it fascinating. I find the possibilities it speaks of, just like at a certain point, you just say, well, I guess I'll find out one day. It sounds awesome, though. Thanks. I mean, you get in their arrangement, their concept of an afterlife is not just, die, go to heaven if you're good enough. The net is wide. There is this concept of annihilationism that is addressed, but it's considered an extremely drastic measure. Like a very high up being has to personally do it to fulfill an act of like the annihilationism thing, which is like actually taking a soul and personality and not even destroying it. You actually still try to save little bits of it and stuff. But the problem is that they describe it as, if you are absolutely insistent and, let's say, unrepentant in completely turning against God, no compromise, just insisting on pure evil and nothing else, and complete disidentification with God. Well, what else can we do with you? And I, as a universalist, feel very troubled by this.
I'm really not sure what. Yeah, I don't know what happened with Josh.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're welcome back.
Welcome back. It makes I was settling on my actually. Anyway, I'll just situate myself a bit more comfortably. What was the last thing said on the stream?
I think you were talking about the afterlife, and I think I was about to ask you about reincarnation in the book of Urantia.
Now that's another interesting one. I've crossed a lot of material that I think is plausible, shall we say, that discusses reincarnation. It doesn't talk about reincarnation as being like for everyone and everything. Maybe added in your life. You, Claire, particularly enjoy having all your past lives or whatever start overwriting who you are.
Well, actually, in Buddhism, you're not supposed to, try to find out exactly who you are because, well, it's a waste of time,
Is
and you
it?
won't know anything for sure.
Perhaps. I don't particularly like that idea. Maybe call me an egoist if you must. But
Well, I
what
mean,
I'm
the thing is,
saying
you
is
won't know for sure. You might
no.
get
Well, I
chance
suppose
to
not.
prepare to say you did this and you thought that in a trance and whatever, but you know.
What I'm saying with regard to past lives is that's a very tricky subject.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the screen seems to have frozen.
God damn it! Very sorry.
I can hear you again. Yeah, you're back.
You can hear
You're
me
back.
again? Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna. There is a better way of solving this problem. Just bear with me. I have to set up my phone hotspot. It depends how long we're going. But I will do what I can here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as bad as when you could remember that.
Yeah. Well, I can see and hear you now. So.
But I'm saying unless I do.
It's happened again.
Are we back? Back? Hello?
Yes.
Good. That should solve the problem because I switched over to my phone hotspot, which is more reliable.
Okay.
Cool.
Good.
Okay. So you were saying something interesting about reincarnation, and I was responding with basically you as a personality, at least in your antenna. This will be the last thing I say. Get a mighty and long journey from where you started through many worlds, many schools, many experiences, many adventures. You are promised adventure, and you will eventually come face to face with God, that being the destiny of all beings. Now, some people take issue with that. I'm getting more satisfied with it. You'll come face to face with God in a very real sense after a very long journey, meeting all sorts of wonderful people along the way. Fellow ascending beings, as well as descending beings, if you will. Those from the divine coming down to help. Some of which have the sun title attached to them. It varies. It's quite a complicated arrangement that exists according to the book. But the idea here is that ultimately you'll meet God, and so much more. And after that, you will perhaps become part of the next era of the universe and eternity. And we don't know where we're going. The angels are rather excited, I hear, to find out where this is all headed. So I recommend this book. It's a fun read. Lots of ideas. Okay, that's your audience. I think I appreciate the level of interest you have already taken. But there's no substitute for the actual text. Now, is there, Claire?
No. But
Yeah.
perhaps one day you will consider reading the Quran and tell me how it compares with the book of around here. I think you owe it to
Genuinely,
yourself to find out.
genuinely, it's now on the reading list. Just don't ask me where it sits in the pile, okay?
Okay. Well, that's nice to know.
I
Nice
mean,
to
I don't
know.
honestly know where it sits in the pile. That's part of the problem.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so let's move on. Let's move on. Let's explore something much smaller, or not trivial, but more focused. And I would like you to ask a question, and I will do my best to answer it because this is your show as well as mine.
Right. I just thought it was, easier just to let you say whatever comes into your mind because, it would be, in a way, what is important to you. And you said
Hmm.
you've been in prison more than once. Was that right?
Yes, yes. The
Um,
second time was arguably even more politically related.
Go on. Would you like to tell us?
I think I do. Like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I intend to be a public figure. And
Hmm.
that means my past will come back to haunt me. So I might as well do what I can to nip it in the bud right now.
Hmm.
Um, so the second time around, maybe it was worse. Worse reflection of me. I'm not entirely sure.
Hmm.
What I did was I threatened to kill Daniel Andrews.
Who's that?
Now I don't really believe this threat was really that serious, but I wasn't behaving right. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
And Daniel Andrews was the premier of my state, the state of Victoria. And this
Hmm.
was during the height, and I mean the height
COVID.
of the COVID lockdowns,
Hmm.
the battles over the vaccine, all of it. All right.
Hmm.
And everyone was just endlessly complaining about Daniel Andrews. Now, honest to God, I didn't really care about Daniel Andrews that much. Daniel Andrews was just some Labour premier, center left, trying to manage the problem, trying to manage it too much. I mean, I can forgive the guy at this point on some levels. On others, I want him to face the music. But that's just the reality of when you're a public figure. He was a public figure. He was a very public figure. And Victoria is not finished with
Hmm.
him. He's gone into retirement at this point. He's trying to last it out in obscurity. But
Hmm.
I don't believe that's the true ending. I think, let me just be ridiculous and say, I don't think God's going to let that one slide. Okay?
Hmm.
This state and this country needs to see that man not crucified, but asked much more difficult questions without any wriggle room for him to
Hmm.
evade and play politics. I'm probably talking about a courtroom here.
Hmm.
But whatever form it takes is the form it takes. Now, as a cheeky little bastard, I had actually challenged Daniel Andrews to a duel. And as you might imagine, I made it a bit theatrical. I delivered that offer in front of a crowd, in front of state parliament. I was running about trying to do as much as possible for the resistance to the COVID tyranny, for the protest movement, whatever you want to call it.
He was Minister
And then,
of Health, in case anyone's
who was?
interested.
Daniel Andrews.
Mhm.
So Daniel Andrews was the premier.
Oh, right.
What do
I
you
think
say about the Minister for Health?
he was later appointed Minister for Health in the Brumby Ministry until the defeat of government at the 2010 election by Ted Ballineau.
Yeah, Ted
What do you
Bailey.
say?
So you're going further back in the biography than I even know about.
Okay.
So he was only came to prominence to me sort of around the time of COVID. Like I knew he was the premier before that, and I maybe heard some stuff. Like Victorian politics actually never interested me all that much because it's state politics, right? It's a bit petty, it's a bit dumb. I mean, what are you going to do? But when Melbourne went insane and the whole lockdown stuff was going on, I mean, he became public enemy number one for the public, or at
Mhm.
least all the Labor supporters were trying to defend him, but he was doing all the stuff that like they would have done in the UK, but maybe worse, like changing the rules, wagging his finger at everyone who broke them and all that sort of thing. Like, I'm sorry, he was being a bit much. I shouldn't have threatened to kill him. I did, so I ended up in jail. All right?
How long this time?
Shorter, I think.
Were you better
But more
treated?
intense. Better treated? I wouldn't say so.
Did you get beaten up this time?
No, I got beaten up the first. Well, yeah, I would say I got beaten up the first time. I was definitely assaulted by the guards really nastily the first time around. This time around, let's put it more in terms of neglect. Okay? As well as just. There was a bit of manhandling. There was all sorts of stuff. Like, it's a complicated situation. Because let's put it this way. Both the first time around with prison and the second time around in prison, I had some remarkably intense spiritual experiences. Like, just way stronger than I knew that sort of stuff could ever be. Way stronger than most that I've heard of. Pretty difficult ones. Kind of appropriate for prison, I guess. I was talking with someone actually recently about, dark nights of the soul. This was a dark weeks of the soul made out of fire. Is my way of putting it. I have a way with words, whatever.
So that was what made you believe in God?
What?
Is that what?
No,
Your prison
not
experience?
exactly. No, those experiences are part of what made me believe in me. Believing in God has been a slower process. Not in terms of denial of God, actually. God wasn't exactly not a topic of these spiritual experiences, but God was not insisting himself into them very much. What I think, oh wow, he was appointed chair of Origin, a youth mental health foundation. That's funny. Anyway. Anyway, the thing about my experiences, my spiritual experiences, and that's actually the even more interesting part of my prison experiences, but it's very hard to describe without sounding insane, and that's certainly how it will be read by most people, even myself. Like, after these things happen to me, and I'm in the aftermath, I did not know what to think or believe or feel. That's pretty common with strong spiritual experiences, actually.
Would you like to describe your spiritual experience?
I'll do my best. One thing you have to understand is they went on for days and days and days, both times. Okay? And there was a lot of backstory and context and all sorts of other stuff worth mentioning. The core spiritual experiences were sort of the peak of the mistreatment with regard to the prison authorities, as both times, as well as the maximal level of personal darkness coming out. That's me. It's my problems. I'm not denying them. As well as huge visionary experiences concerning the future primarily, but also other things. Look, Claire, if you want to engage really seriously with religion, prophecy is a big deal, right? So prophecy is you're an agnostic, right?
Yes.
I've got to ask you, what do you make of prophecy? Do you believe it's real to some extent, symbolically real? Tell us.
You're going to hate me for saying that, but I just don't believe there's any point in arguing about something that hasn't even happened.
Sure. That's perfectly sensible. For some of us who think that we're all that and a bag of chips, like me, the arrogant bastards who think they're men of destiny, we do concern ourselves with this stuff. And it's both harrowing and inspiring to see yourself up on the big screen of your own mind and go, whoa, and go, oh my God. Does that make sense?
You feel you're called to perform some
Yes.
act.
Well, we were talking about eschatology earlier, and this definitely ties into that. I mean, there was not a lot of ambiguity to it, though. I was kind of free to make up my own mind about what I was seeing and experiencing in a way. Although at the same time, massive spiritual forces were moving through me, trying to convince me of all sorts of things and teach me a lot, right?
Hmm.
One of the things that kept coming up is that, like, basically this is about the end times, and no, they're not far away. And yes, I'll have some part to play. And no, it's not a simple one. It's not easy to explain to me, as in what I was being shown, told, whatever. And it's not going to be easy to explain to anyone else. I mean, the best way to explain to people is sometimes not to explain it at all, but to show them by doing it. I don't have a lot of accomplishments to my name, to be sure. So, I'm sure I come across as pretentious and arrogant and all of that. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if we really want to take God and religion and all of that seriously, what part can we really leave out? If we're talking about ends of the world, eschatology and such, and eschatology is in all three Abrahamic religions, right? Which is, of course, why you have a strong interest in this thing, right? These Abrahamic religions and their components, I would say.
Hmm.
I don't think prophecy can be separated entirely from eschatology. Would you say so?
No, of course it can't be. But what I try to say to people who think the Messiah is coming, the end times are
Mm.
here. It's like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whether it's going to take place in your lifetime or not. You still have to be in good standing with God, whether the Messiah arrives in your lifetime or not. If it is your hope, your objective to get to heaven, you kind of still do. You have to still do the right thing, whether the Messiah is coming or not. So and then it's like, oh, what's the right thing?
Always a good
And
question.
this
What
will
is the
be an
right thing?
endless discussion because nobody agrees on the right thing, right?
Well,
And then you take up,
one of the
the rest of your
beauties,
life discussing what that is, with
yes.
nobody ever agreeing with you, right?
Well, one of the beauties of there not being a never-ending sorry, one of the beauties of there being a never-ending discussion about the right thing is that perhaps there are many right things, and we actually have a lot more freedom than we realize, especially on the other side, in heaven, as you might say. Um, I
But
mean,
but if you came to believe in the Abrahamic God, okay, I just don't get what the problem is. It's like, okay, you believe in the Abrahamic God. Is he the one who forbade idolatry, who gave you 10 commandments? And if the answer is yes, then I guess if you're Jew, you have to follow the Torah. If you're Gentile, you have to follow the Quran. Because as far as Christians are concerned, um, none of the authors of the book of the New Testament are God. They're not even from Jesus, right? There's no book of Jesus. There's no
no,
book
there
of
is not.
Mary or book of
No.
Joseph and what he thought about, being stepfather to God's, only son.
Well, he was genuine father, but that's another
I
debate.
would
Go on,
like a
please.
book of Joseph, just to know how he felt about things. But anyway, actually, I did get AI to produce a book of Joseph on my Substack. So
How heretical! Oh my.
um, and my theory is that because the Quran actually accepts a virgin birth, and I thought,
Hmm.
okay, is it in theory possible for a woman to get pregnant as a virgin? And the answer is yes, because there's this category of pregnancies called splash pregnancies.
Oh, that thing. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, and I thought,
I
well,
don't think
maybe
that's
he's
what
Joseph's
happened,
son
but
after all. So happy endings all round, right?
you have no idea. Um, I gotta answer that one. You wicked girl. You like getting into the gory details of sex, and you like making the Christians and the others uncomfortable about it. And honestly, you're not wrong to do so. I mean, a big part of the problem with religion, and you and I may take different sides on this, but it's clear that it is a big problem. Is how do we handle sex?
We just have to. respect the institution of marriage. And if you want to reduce the whole idea, it's like we're not supposed to marry anyone of the we're only supposed to have sex with our spouse, and our spouse can only be somebody of the opposite sex, not within the forbidden degrees of consanguinity. Two things. Can we remember that? No.
No, we can't.
No, because we want to do stuff, right? And we think we're going to get away with it.
Getting away with it is the best part usually, and it never happens. Oh boy. Okay. Can I just check my phone for a second, and I'll get right back to you.
Sure.
See if okay, that's actually you. I'll look at that later. No, I think we're okay. All right. So I did not personally believe in marriage very much because I watched the marriage of my parents. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was a time when I thought, maybe, my parents would be better off divorced, but I'm so happy that they didn't. It's just a
Well,
horror
mine
of
did.
getting to know, dad's new girlfriend and mom's new boyfriend, and then becoming stepmom. Oh, and then having step siblings. Oh my God, it's just so horrible. It's like, as if your own family, your own blood and flesh were not horrible and weird enough. You have to, deal with other. Oh, it's horrible, horrible. I'm just so grateful that my parents stayed married.
Okay.
And, and I can see how it would mess up people's lives and minds.
Well, I mean, you could
It's
argue
like,
that.
yeah, deep down, I wish you weren't here. I wish you weren't living
Oh,
with us. That kind of idea. Would you kind of think, well, you know, that's what you think. That's how you feel, right? And you could say that about, well, immigrants. It's like, I preferred my country before you lot came over. And it's like,
well,
yeah, but they're here now. What are you going to do? You have to
what
make
are
the
you
best
gonna
of
do?
things. And
I
maybe,
suppose.
note down in your notebook of wisdom how not to put yourself in a situation when, they all just come and, change things. But not that
Hmm.
things wouldn't change anyway without immigrants, and maybe kind of accept that something did go wrong, and history is a wonderful resource for you to figure out what went wrong. But
Yeah,
most people just don't think that far.
you could say that. So we really aren't going to agree on this one because you seem pretty certain about marriage. Um, I don't hate marriage, but I just don't think it's for everyone.
Well, I totally get it that people prefer to have more than one sex partner, and
Yeah,
they,
a lot of them do,
yeah, I mean, well, both women and men do, and that's why you have this,
especially the
you
men.
know, yeah, and
Yeah,
and men don't suffer from unwanted pregnancy, but then they also get
we do
angry when
actually, but
their
that's
children,
another matter.
yeah, and that they will also get angry when their unborn child is aborted without consultation.
We might,
So,
we might.
I think we're all kind of, I think it's like you're a pedestrian and you think cars are a nuisance, and then you're a driver and you think pedestrians are a nuisance. It depends on your perspective.
It does depend on your perspective.
Yes. And,
Now,
I mean, I
sorry,
guess the
go on.
only fair way is like these are the rules. You break them at your own, um,
You ever
at
heard
your
the
own
expression
danger.
"all's fair in love and war"?
Well,
I
yeah,
don't
no,
really like
yeah,
that
I'm
expression
just
much,
saying.
but do you know it?
Yes, I've heard the expression, but I'm saying the rules are there in anticipation of them being broken.
It was so British, my darling. It was so British. The social rules, like if there's any rule you are really sticking to, it's marriage, and for social reasons,
For
not even for
eugenic
personal
reasons,
reasons.
it's for you. I know we're not supposed to say the E word, right?
I'm okay with it. I'm okay with
Okay,
it. Go on.
okay.
Your
Well,
ranch is
great.
okay with it, but I shouldn't mention that. It's
But,
a funny
but
one.
that was its purpose. The whole practice of marriage forces us to jump through a hoop. It's like, well, if you want to have sex and children, you got to find someone to apply for a marriage license with. Otherwise, you're on your own, mate. Right? You have to jointly apply for this marriage license thing,
Mm.
and then people will think, yeah, you're okay. You've had your wedding, you've
Mm.
got your
Mm.
wedding, ceremony, and people will treat you as respectable, right? I mean,
Okay,
that used to be
so
the case.
there's some really good reasoning going on here, Claire, despite the absolutism. Okay.
Hmm.
And I find that what if we could have the spirit of what you're asking for without absolutism concerning marriage?
Well, some people will get away with it and others not, and then it's really watching the people at the top get away with it that opens the floodgates at the bottom, right?
Perhaps that's part of it. Yeah, that's got to be part of it. You're right.
So
Um,
at the yeah, I mean,
go
at
on.
the end
No,
of
no,
the
go on.
day, general morality is linked to sexual morality.
Yeah, I've got to accept that one to some extent.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I think we're just gone too far with the swinging 60s and the sex revolution, and you
Okay,
know.
okay. If you say we've gone too far, now we're getting somewhere rather than the marriage absolutism, okay?
Mm.
We've gone too
I mean, that's a
far.
gold standard, which we don't feel like observing, but that was it really. And then we are straying. We have strayed very far from it. But it's
Okay.
not just Westerners. I think traditionally everybody, if they thought they could get away
Marriage is
with
pretty
it, would
common.
choose. Yeah.
Oh, but also getting away with it is pretty common.
Well, I'm saying
Again, there's no
actually
real getting
only
away
because
with it. We all know
I,
that.
no, no, no. I will tell you how
Go on.
under secular Quranism, nobody's going to get away with it because under my system, if you're a married father under secular Quranism and your wife has just given birth, you will get
Hmm.
a free DNA test
Oh, really?
of
Oh,
every
so we're not
child
allowing
your wife
the
produces.
sneakiness from the women, are we? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, yeah,
No female sneakiness on this topic. Now, this is a little bit interesting.
yeah, yeah. So,
It is
so
indeed.
they won't think of cheating, or there will be consequences if they do.
I see. I see.
And I think the farmers, whoever produces these DNA tests will be happy. The companies that they'll be happy about that, and then we
Hmm.
get a DNA bank, right, for to catch burglars and criminals and bad
Oh,
people.
here we go with the eugenics.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Have you ever heard of Scrump Monkey or Scrump and Evelyn? Those guys.
No.
Oh, okay. I've watched a lot of their material. They also hate my guts, by the way, because I'm always
Oh,
annoying them.
is that the transgender person you're
Yeah,
talking about?
Evelyn is the transgender one with the weird like Scottish accent or something,
Mhm.
and Scrump is the other guy. The channel is called Scrump Monkey that they're usually on. They'll make appearances with like AA, right?
Mhm.
Academic Age and Non-Alcoholics. But
Mhm.
so I got interested in them because of AA, and they do really, really interesting, way too based, but way too based could be an interesting perspective. Way too based coverage of political topics, social topics, all sorts of things, right?
Mhm.
Something that you reminded me of with the dealing with the robbers and the burglars and all that through genetics. They
Mhm.
said poverty doesn't cause crime. What do you think about that statement?
Um, I would tend to disagree.
Okay.
I mean, it's one of the causes of crime. I would
One of the
say,
causes.
yeah,
Maybe a little
but
bit, yeah.
obviously bad
Sure.
parenting and
Yeah.
you know,
Well, you were talking about
um,
the genetics just moments ago.
yeah, yeah. Because
So are they.
I'm sorry, but if you're illegitimate, then um, both your parents are sex offenders according to the Quran and actually
Ooh.
according to the Bible, right? Because
How
fornication is a
does
mortal sin. I
how
don't
about
make
that polygamy though? Hey, that's going to lead to some social imbalances.
Well, actually, the Quran. I know Muslims are, famous for, this four wives max rule, but actually, most
Mm,
Muslims do not have the energy or the resources to have four wives.
I
It's
bet
like,
not.
yeah, in extremis after, a ruinous World War or two, like what Britain suffered, polygamy might be a quick way of replenishing your racial stock instead of,
Mm,
importing all these, um, brown and black people from other parts of the empire, right?
mm,
Just
mm.
acknowledge that.
Yeah, I can acknowledge that.
And
Um,
actually, it could be seen as more of a burden than a kind of like, who would want four wives having to support them and deal
oh
with their
yeah, no, I
arguments and
totally get that as well.
their
Oh,
in-laws? I mean, bloody
there's
hell.
there's an old Billy Connolly joke that please take it as a joke. Don't. I think you will. He was talking about like the whole 72 virgins thing or whatever, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
who wants to deal with 72 virgins? I'd take the two rip roaring sluts any day.
Yes, yes.
Well, yeah, that's Billy
Probably
Connolly
after the
for you.
second one, you think you might have over-ordered, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Look, my experiences with three ways has actually been pretty disappointing, so I have some sympathy here.
Mm.
Sorry, we're on the topic, so sometimes we speak from personal experience.
Yes,
Um,
but anyway, that's not in the Quran anyway. It's just stuff
oh,
made
okay.
up, obviously to motivate young men into,
Yes.
getting
The
themselves
wars.
killed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, I do think you aren't quite as well. Okay, you've walked it back slightly from marriage's absolute, which we cannot deviate from under any circumstances. Just a little smidge. But I
Mhm.
just my genuine position on the topic is not that marriage is irrelevant or I could get married for all I know. That's an interesting question.
It
I don't
sounds
need
like
to
you
be
could be
free.
forced into marriage,
Oh,
because
I
if
might
you
be.
cohabit in Oz for what, 9 months or something, it's like we will deem you as having married the woman,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Something
that's a part of Australian law at this point. It's like, Australians don't actually
like that.
particularly like getting married as much as other cultures at this point. So that's probably why they invented the whole de facto relationship thing and mandatory splitting of property and all that crap. Which, by the
Mhm.
way, makes things even worse for coupling up. Um, but I don't think you quite realize here that yes, there's a lot of degeneracy and taking it too far, and certainly I've indulged. Sure, put my hand up, call me guilty. Um, but the other thing that's going on here is people are renegotiating the gender relations, they're renegotiating the sexual relations, they're renegotiating the nature of relationships.
Mhm.
And I know it's not gonna just be marriage is the outcome. Back to old marriage. I don't think that's on the cards. I do think something better than what we have right now is on the cards. Okay. At least we can
Polyamory.
hope for that much. I would not go so far as to say polyamory is the general solution here. I would certainly say that it's tough to deny that some people, I'm not going to say that they can make it work, but people can't make marriages work anymore. So it's kind of, two issues there. But with polyamory, right, there can be genuine love, connection, and experience that is not invalidated by the lack of simple traditional marriage.
Mhm.
It has redeeming qualities.
Mhm.
Can't get divorced great if you don't own anything. Yeah, that's kind of my strategy, mate. I mean, up until a point. One of the it's just let's just take a total tangent here. Have you ever heard of Gina Reinhardt?
No.
One of Australia's richest people. She inherited, I can't even remember if there was a divorce. There's probably a divorce somewhere in her backstory, but she basically inherited a huge mining fortune
Mhm.
and tries to play a bit of politics with it. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't think I don't think she's actually a clueless fool because I mean, how can she be? She actually has held on to the money. It says
Mhm.
something. But she's not well respected by the Australian public, at least not by all of them. But here's the funny thing here, right? Most females with large fortunes, it's one of two ways: it's inheritance or it's divorce, ain't it? They don't build those empires; they take them. So I guess what I'm saying here is marriage will change. I will grant you that it will be part of the future, or at least something very, very much like it. But do you see that there were always issues with the traditional arrangements that aren't just about people being capable of keeping their agreements with God or society or whatever? There are problems with the traditional arrangements that were not fully satisfactory to people, and that ultimately we need new answers. I mean, even if we could take this a bit more in your direction, which is to say, well, if marriage is the future, marriage needs an upgrade.
Well, do you have your manifesto of your upgrade of marriage?
I'm asking you because I don't.
Well, I'm saying monogamy is the produces the most stable society,
Okay, that's
and it
nice.
has its burdens. Patriarchy has its
It does,
burdens. It's not just
definitely.
men to order women around. They have to pay for stuff. They have to they're expected to marry, become husbands, be good fathers, and you guys don't want to do it anymore. So obviously it
No,
has
a
its
lot of
burdens.
us don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unless you get a society that privileges married fathers and has a few tax incentives, you're praised, you're
Hmm.
patted on the head saying, well done, old chap,
No,
with
pat
your
it on the head. Yeah, we know when that's the case, and we know when it ain't. I think
uh
actually this is part of the problem here. Neither women nor men know how to honor men anymore. Like honor, the real deal stuff. Okay, so this is me going back to tradition. How do you honor a man in this day and age?
well, okay. There have been many, long-winded discussions about, what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And I think
Sure.
we should have a discussion about men saying what we want from women and women saying what we want from men. And it's like, of course, we want to be all kinds of things, but
Mm,
basically, it's whether the opposite sex sees us as in any way desirable as a long-term partner with a joint.
mm,
Undertaking of rearing children, then it's only the other sex who is entitled to have a say in, well, what could make me want to marry again? What could,
mm.
and men
What
would say,
could?
well, a bit of respect for a change.
Yeah,
And
that would be
women would
nice.
just say, well, a bit of competence. You just have to be, taller, richer, smarter, and
Yeah,
not be,
some of which we cannot control, ladies. Go on.
yeah, and not be, muscling in on female territory, like, moaning like women and being transgender and,
Well, we'll need some of our territory back, obviously, right?
yeah, yeah. So both are, instead of having complementary, fitting in with each other relationships, that they are competitive
Yeah,
relationships.
that's actually quite a good point that you've reached now with the complementary, if you will, harmony. Yeah,
Hmm.
harmony, as opposed to this weird competition through attempting equality. You see what I mean by that?
Well, yes, because it would be, well, I'm trying to outdo you, and you're trying to outdo me, and then
Mm,
of course there's already disharmony
mm,
in me telling you that I do better than you, and you doing the same to me, and
mm.
it should be, oh, I could put up a shelf in a million years. Thank you for putting up this shelf, and you say, oh, I don't even know how to boil an egg. Thank you for cooking me this delicious meal.
See, I've had to learn quite a few of both gender skills because it's tough to get by if you don't right now, especially
Yeah,
if you're
because
younger.
we're competing, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. All these men who want to be TV cooks. What the hell? TV cooks?
It
Stupid.
belongs to Julia Childs, damn it. And maybe that other one, the British one. What's her name?
Gordon Ramsay.
No, I'm
No,
talking about the woman one.
Delia
What's her
Smith,
name?
Nigella
Nigella was
Lawson.
who
I
I
don't
was
know who
thinking
the
of. There
latest
you
one
go,
is.
Nigella. That's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
well, a lot of people say her
Look,
recipes don't work. She just sort of, prances around
maybe
looking sexy, and that's it.
you are
And
such a
licks her
woman.
fingers,
You are,
right? And that's it.
I mean this. I mean this as a compliment. You are such a brilliant bitch, Claire. You are really good at it.
Well, I
I'm
tried to
sorry,
get
I
to the
can't help
point
myself.
ASAP. I mean, yes, I did watch her,
Yes, yes.
and had fun watching, her
Uh,
do her thing.
of course, of course. I mean, it's often I've noticed this. I mean, it's not a rule, but the women often have the taste in the reality TV shows. Have you seen that for yourself?
I've seen a few,
Well, it's,
yes.
yeah, like the cooking reality TV show MasterChef is often won by women and watched by women. That's here in Australia, anyway. Um, so the thing is, I think we're just having fun at this point. Actually, I don't think we have to make points with every statement.
Hmm.
In fact, sorry, I'm still recovering from a cold. It's been weeks.
Hmm.
But the thing I want to say here is you can't get much more movement with the gender crisis. Let's put it like that: the gender, sexual, relationship, marriage crisis with browbeating.
Hmm.
Hmm? The women are doing a hell of a lot of browbeating, and the men are just disengaging more and more and more.
Hmm.
Oh, this is a decent comment you've brought up. We don't know how to care. We don't know how to respect. We are too based in the ideas, definitions, assumptions, not the embodiment, as in living the thing itself. Yeah, I can see that. I tend to agree. And that's why I actually, okay, let's come back to the serious a little bit. How do you give men honor anymore?
By but okay, but by promising to love, honor, and obey, and then you can still break that promise and still be a nagging shrew after you've got the ring on your finger, but at least you can say you promised to obey me. When the nagging gets too much,
Yeah.
but it's
All
all
the
these sort of
nagging.
outward signs of acknowledging the ideal, right?
Mhm.
And then she can say, you promised to protect and provide, and what's
Mhm.
this you brought home? Nothing,
What's
whatever.
you really do know the arguments, don't you, Claire?
So I'm
Now
quite
I
fun.
gotta ask you a cheeky question. You ever been through these arguments much yourself?
Um, I've been through some of them. I've heard my parents, I've been married, and
Okay.
you recognise the usual battle ground, because really marriage is really a battle for supremacy, you know, fought
So much for
throughout the
harmony.
marriage, and obviously if you're in a good marriage, you can do it nicely and say things
Sure.
nicely.
Sure. Actually, this reminds me of an old Jordan Peterson point, which was if you have a relationship in which the partners never fight, it's doomed.
Sorry, it's what?
If you have a relationship in which the partners never fight,
Oh,
it's
yes, it's
doomed.
dead.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You need the life and the passion and the fire and the disagreement and the variety and all that good stuff.
Hmm.
And you
Yes.
need real contentions. Well, what do I mean by contentions in this case? But sometimes they're really simple and dumb, but sometimes they truly challenge one another. This is actually the beauty of, I think, what you're getting at, rather than browbeating. The
Hmm.
beauty of two people really becoming close for the long term is to really know and change one another for the better, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. We're not just concerned with society here. We also have to be concerned with individuals
Hmm.
and their real experiences. Um, let's also come back to honor because I think I actually do have a few statements in this direction.
Hmm.
You got to go back to the old stuff that works when it comes to honor. Do you know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Hmm.
And by that, I'm not just talking about the marriage relationship. When I'm talking about honoring men, I'm also talking about society honoring men and men
Yes.
honoring other men, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so what do I mean exactly? Knighthood is not a bad place to start, actually.
Knighthood.
Everything from knighthood.
What?
Um,
Sir Lancelot. What?
no, 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 no. As in, you give honors to men of worth, and knighthood can be one of them, right? I mean, you British should know a bit about that.
Yes. Yes.
Of
You
course.
mean titles? Knights and
Titles are a start.
lords and
Yeah, yeah. And
barons.
then modernity does this thing where you can be a Scottish lord for $20. We'll give you a piece of land and give you a certificate, right? That's part of the modern problem, right? Honor is old fashioned stuff. And it takes time and it takes a record and a reputation to really get. I mean, there's other ways of talking about honor here. You can earn a lot of honor in an instant, too, right? Actually, speaking of Macbeth, which we're both involved with, that was Macbeth's problem. He earned a lot of honor really fast, and then he didn't know what to do with it. In that battle, right? Right at the start of the play. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm a bit vague about that,
Okay.
but basically, Lady Macbeth was saying, "You promised, you'd kill Duncan. You
You're
got
focused on the
this
Macbeth. I'm
so
focused on the
terrible."
man part, the
Yeah.
male dominated part, the big battle that starts the play. Okay, and we don't see much of it. Okay, but one of the really important points that is made. I like this comment, by the way. I recommend humor and lightheartedness of helpful ingredients to make a good marriage. Definitely. But back to Macbeth. Macbeth won a lot of honor on the battlefield, especially by being loyal and effective when someone else had betrayed the king, Duncan. Yeah. So the problem then is that he won all that. He didn't even realize quite that he won all that. And then he gets approached by prophecy right to his face from the witches. Okay. And they do a number on him. Okay. It's a very dark thing they are giving him. Would you agree?
Yes, because they prophesied his, or he thought they were promising him success. I forget
Well, they really
the
weren't. And
exact
if you
words.
read the tone of the scene, that's pretty obvious, right? Okay. So, okay, let's keep going here. So Macbeth won too much. This is a bit more in reality than rather than the prophecy line. This is a bit more the pragmatics and the politics. Macbeth won a bunch of honor and finds himself in line for the throne, or it's some sort of thing like that, right? So like that whole thing of Cawdor stuff. I actually don't quite know why he ends up king, and someone else doesn't. There's something about the heirs fleeing, right? And they're fleeing for kind of good reason, but also, why didn't they make a stand and say, well, it's my kingdom now, fuck off, Macbeth? Or something like that. At any rate. I think that's Malcolm, actually. I played Malcolm once. Anyway, yada, yada. Back to honor. Honor is great old-fashioned topic. And Shakespeare knows a bit about it, I would say. Conferring honor is almost impossible in some ways, but it's also very important in some ways. Honor comes from within in a certain way. It's your bearing, it's your attitude, it's your actions, it's your accepting of consequences, all of that, right? And furthermore, the conferring of honor is more like the cherry on top. It's the recognition, which is very important, crucial even, but it's also far from the point. I mean, true honor doesn't let itself go to waste. True honor understands the importance of betrayal on a very foundational level. Because you have to know when to betray and when you are betrayed when it comes to honor and loyalty. Now, it might sound like a funny thing to say when to betray, but when you take oaths of loyalty, and then you are betrayed in a sort of spiritual sense. Like when you make an agreement with even your king, it is a two-way street. You aren't following him because he's the king. I guess I got to do what he says, man. Like that's
When to
not the
disobey
arrangement.
orders, I think you mean.
That is one thing that I'm bringing up, but it goes deeper. Okay. So if the king betrays the spirit of the loyalty arrangement, and it could be some sort of perceived slight, which is sort of the superficial thing, or something way deeper, like like the king, for example, betrays an ally for absolutely raw, untrammeled, ambitious, Machiavellian selfishness. So they're betraying someone else, but you're there for it, right? And this says a lot about your king, and it says a lot about you to stick by him. You stick by him up to a point, but if he keeps this up, you got to leave him.
Mm.
You have to betray him back. Um, and this
And
is the old
this
stuff of
requires,
civil wars. And go on.
yeah. No, no, I'm just saying you know, you're prepared to put up with a certain amount of crap, right? I mean, it's actually in
Yeah, yeah,
the American
basically.
Declaration of Independence. You know, people are accustomed to what they have become accustomed to, and they will put up with all kinds of crap until it becomes unbearable. When it's obviously wrong, that even people who aren't in government have noticed. And that's when
Indeed.
you you yes, you near revolution. But before we leave the subject of marriage, I seem
Oh,
to remember Confucius saying that, and I think they were having problems way back then, and he was saying, well, perhaps the best way husbands and wives can treat each other is to treat each other like honored guests in their own
mm.
home, and that's the only way to create harmony, politeness, and not throwing, I don't know, your old dirty socks on the bathroom floor or whatever it is, just remember
Yes,
not to
yes.
do
You
things
have
like
been married, haven't you? Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. So one thing I would also suggest, in addition, okay, is true affection is very important. All right. Affection is like, oh wow, to truly go deep on the matter of affection, that's a deep one for me. I would say it is in many ways one of the things we long the most to receive and long the very most to give as well. Would you agree with that?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I was reading a
Oh,
comment.
that's okay. That's okay. So I said, affection is one of the things we long the very most to receive and the very most to give. Okay.
Well,
Especially if you're a romantic at heart like me.
I think I'm
Um,
capable of that. But I'm saying, as long as the other person thinks you really care about them, they will put up with all kinds of things. It's like, well,
sure.
he may be annoying, but he loves me really, or the other way
Sure.
around. You
She
know,
also sometimes loves being annoyed, fellas. That's a thing that happens. You know what I mean?
yeah,
He
yeah,
loves being annoyed too. He loves also to sometimes pretend that he's annoyed when he isn't, and so does she. And all the games, all the fun and games of marriage and love.
yes,
Um,
and the performance of it.
what do you mean by performance of it?
Well, the performance of being, husband and wife and role models that we were talking about earlier,
Hmm.
the fact that there were gender roles, it was to make it easier for people to need each other. Like, well, I don't know how to put up shells. I don't know how to boil an egg. And it's like, oh, but because I have you, all these things are done. Blah blah blah.
Yeah. Two things that spring to mind from that are technology and community. And the death of community in favor of technology is one of the big problems here. Would you agree?
Well, yes, with AI boyfriends and girlfriends, it's like in the end,
Yes, yes.
the Old Testament is correct. It's like, no, you can't just masturbate to whatever, because if
Oh,
everybody gets that idea, then of
mm,
course there will be no marriages, and there will be no next generation being produced and reared.
I suppose. But let me flip it around. What if you use those AI boyfriends and girlfriends as practice for the real thing?
Well, why not practice on the real thing? People.
Ah, I got you now. That's what people are doing with those relationships that don't end in marriage.
Well, the rules should be a bit different now.
Why?
because I mean, I remember talking to a woman who was obviously, mature, and she said, I just didn't want to put out before the ring was on my finger, and
Huh.
that's why I lost out, because I stuck to
Huh.
my principles, because obviously, women have to put out at some stage before marriage
Mm.
because men demand a free test drive. Yes, that
Ah, are we wrong to? Are we truly wrong to? That's a
well,
question.
I have come to the conclusion that okay, if the sex is great, then you won't be able to see the true faults of that person that people, around you might be able to see because you would be, too persuaded by the other thing. So I guess when during courtship, you
Yeah.
should be just looking for, well, is there mental illness in his family? Is there
Oh.
hereditary?
Oh
What are
wow,
his
the
prospects? Is
eugenics
he
again.
well, yes, there's a list. There's a very old-fashioned list, and
Mm.
has he invited you to meet his parents, vice versa, and then these are the standard courtship moves, right?
I I
Who do you
understand the
have to talk
tradition
to?
you are. Sorry, go on. Finish.
That's it. I finished.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Sorry. So I understand you really loving those old fashioned traditions, and that's like I'm not even against you fully on that. I think I made that clear. But I gotta tell you, Claire, have you met the younger generations lately? Do you think any of this is gonna come through to before
No,
we're
no,
all
of course
dead
you
of
can't expect
population
them to.
collapse?
It has to come from above. That's why I have
Ah, it
secular
has to come
oneness.
from within as well. It has to come from their choices.
Well,
Otherwise, it's a
yeah,
cycle that starts all over again with rebellion
well,
and resistance and all of that.
yeah, but my thing basically is to get on Tucker Carlson, explain the problem,
So,
and
Cucker
then
Dawson. Sorry,
yes,
that's how it sounded. Go on. Sorry.
yes,
Bad grammar.
and that's it. I mean, obviously, the biggest independent journalist, and then
Mm.
I don't expect people to agree with me, but I just have to, you know, um, display my wares, so to speak.
Yes.
And
The
it's like,
yeah.
well, this is what you need to restore the patriarchy, and obviously you have to change the rules. And if so
Mm,
many of the laws under the current system have to be changed, then you are talking about a different moral system and
mm,
a
mm,
different religion or a different
mm,
secular ideology, a secular
mm.
political ideology. But I think really
Okay.
liberalism is our real religion because it's the
I
only
mean,
thing
in
that,
a sense, yes. In a sense, yes. Of the current day and of the political order.
because
It's not
it is
much
a
of a
kind of,
religion, frankly.
I mean, I think the censorship is increasing because they know they can't
It
win the
is.
argument using facts and
No.
logic. That's why, it's like, it used to be, you can talk about the subject, but you can't, um, your arguments have to be, sensible, and until it becomes, you can't even talk about this thing, right? You can't talk
Mm,
about, I don't know, vaccines, stolen elections,
mm,
you know.
mm.
So, um, and we know the reason. Really, they can't win the argument, so they don't even want to engage, and that's why
No.
you get this lack of engagement. But
Mm.
this also happens in the dissident right, you know.
Oh, definitely. Actually, the dissident right is a good topic of conversation. Would you like to move there or stick with
Yes,
marriage?
please.
Okay. So, let's not get all personal here. Let's just talk about the state of the dissident right in general, which is a pretty interesting topic. It's almost dead, but it's almost about to become something more interesting. And that's my contention, anyway,
Hmm.
because it has run out of a bit of its steam. I remember when the debate was better and the ideas were fresher and we were discovering the old material, or at least some of us were. I don't know, but like no one had heard of Evola and Spengler in the academy, the modern academy, certainly, but we all were talking about them, right? Great
Hmm.
thinkers who were sidelined for political reasons,
Hmm.
uh, and stuff like that, right? It was a good time. We were getting somewhere, at least somewhere, right?
Hmm.
We weren't getting to our final destination, and 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 I don't think we ever would in the dissident, right? because it was a temporary move. In the very name, dissident right? No dissident wants to be a dissident forever. I mean, come on. But it's a temporary movement that is serving in its role, and it's basically over now. I mean, academic agent, who's basically the heart of it, as far as I'm concerned, thinks it's pretty over.
Well, that's why he's sort
Um,
of, making nice with Caleb Morpin and trying
yeah,
to
which is
identify with the
interesting.
left. I know a few of
Yeah.
them. It's like I've renounced my. It's like, well, you have no principles.
Oh, you think of it that way. I think of it as just look as this is a step along the road. Um, the power and depth of what the dissident right did uncover and talk about and not embody, but at least wants to embody. That's going to play out. That's going to play out in the near future, I believe. Okay. Um, but the dissident right, at best, is still far from enough, politically and
They
otherwise.
have no big idea. But recently, because of the US-Iran war,
Mm.
Morgoth was sort of saying, "Oh, look at the Iranians. They got their country back with Sharia," or words to that
Mm.
effect. And
Interesting.
he used to be pretty Islamophobic. I mean, I've heard a few things he said.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and actually, Millennial Woe said some years ago, it's like, well, we can't believe in Christianity. Surely we need some big idea. And
Mm.
could it be Islam? And well, I mean, I actually transcribed it, and I was pleased that I did because he deleted that video, or
Ah,
when his account was deleted. So he did ask those questions many years ago,
I
and then
see.
forgot that he ever asked them
Well,
because it was
perhaps
too
they were just a thought experiment for him, but yeah, sorry, go on.
because it would lose him so many viewers and subscribers if he
Yeah, it would.
pursued
It
it,
would.
right? I mean, I'm just a headbanger who say, well, why not? Is it enough to say you just don't, you don't like it? I can't make you. You don't
Mm.
wanna. Is that a grown-up reason to just,
Look, there's
put it
just no
out?
getting around the take up rate amongst Europeans, white Europeans of Islam is just minuscule. Okay.
Well, that's the thing because they don't want to be treated like foreigners in their own country, and this is what will happen to them if they, do it properly, right?
But I
And
think I
then they
think
have
what
to
you're
hang out with
neglecting.
brown people in masks.
Well, if we're talking about eugenics and race being real, I don't think Islam is the embodiment of the white race at all. I'm sorry, it's never gonna happen.
Well, that's because you think of Christianity as white, but I'm saying
Mm.
if there's only one Abrahamic God,
Yeah.
well,
Well, maybe we can have a more interesting compromise than you seem to be implying here. Maybe
okay. What I'm trying to say to
go on.
people who think Islam is a way, it's like, well, I've got this sort of intermediate space called secular Quranism, allowing you
Ah,
to straddle both sides of the debate. You can go to Muslims and say, I kind of see the point of your book, and on the other hand, you can still, talk to your fellow white people and make these points and say, why not? Have you got a better idea? Why not? Have you got a better idea?
well,
Don't we need to produce white children after,
yeah.
marrying each other?
So there was a very interesting concept once mentioned by AA of all people that in some ways Christianity was so profoundly adopted by Europe, not necessarily just because it was like for us and by us and deeply us, but that in a way Christianity mutated and changed a little bit
Yeah.
by our genetic nature or the biospirit, if you prefer. Does that make sense?
Well, my theory about Christianity is that it mutated into something else after its Atlantic crossing. So, in Europe,
Oh, so like
it was
the American stuff.
yeah, I mean, the Americans just have their social clubs, and there's nothing. They will not affect any politics by going to a different church and becoming an ortho bro or whatever. Because in
Oh, the
America,
author
the
bro
church
thing.
is separated from the state. It's already
Yes.
in their constitution, so it doesn't matter whether you go to church and which church you go to. The Congress will say, "Oh, get lost." We're
Yeah.
not going to, have this law just because it says so in your Bible. And
I mean,
so it's just a country of fake Christians.
well, in a certain point of view, theocracy does away with the middleman now, doesn't it? But I'm still yet to be fully convinced, as you know. Um, Theocracy, I think, which is part of what, like, secular Quranism and one party theocracy, these are both views that you've advanced. So forgive my confusion.
Well,
You
okay,
can
what
clarify
I'm
if you like.
trying to say is that it's really Sharia for non-Muslims because it's only a legal system. It's not a belief system. Because
Mm.
I am agnostic. I keep telling people that, but they forget. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
it doesn't say you have to believe in this, God, or you don't have to. It's like it's optional. It's not
you're
compulsory.
criticizing Christianity for not really being believers and for kind of being half-assed about it. And now you want us to be half-assed Muslims. How does that
No, I'm
work?
just saying, if your government supports marriage, then you'll probably be okay, and then you can go to your preferred place of religious worship, and I don't want to change anyone's beliefs, but you can just
Mm,
have a rule that says, well, we're not just going to be a society of unmarried parents,
no,
right?
that's good.
With badly parented offspring who nobody with a business wants to hire, right?
Oh boy, don't they want to hire us? Okay, okay, okay.
And
Let's
because there's so many
huh?
immigrants, it's like, yeah, I've heard people who say, well, they won't hire us if we don't speak Polish. But it was a sort of, sweet spot for British um, businesses to just prefer East Europeans as um, employees and not wanting to hire the locals.
Mm, mm.
And then they sort of pretend it's about speaking Polish, but really they don't want to hire them, right? Because
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah.
spoil the atmosphere and have their own way of doing things and whatever. Because I mean, obviously, for a business, it's like, yeah, we all want you to agree with each other and not be fighting each other and going to HR
Mm,
with your complaints about each other.
mm,
And if you're all speaking the same language, having the same religion, then it's easier to kind of cater for you, right?
mm. Okay. I
Um,
mean, homogeneity does have its advantages as well as variety having its advantages, diversity, if you will. But that word has been destroyed, as we know. Um,
well, I mean, even in the matter of seeking votes, we know Democratic politicians prefer Muslims. It's because they just go to the mosque elder, get the mosque elder to support their program, and then the mosque elder will tell the congregation to vote for this or that party. So
yeah.
that's why it's like who knows what a local believes, And if you go to the pub, are they even registered to vote? And
Um,
aren't you wasting your time? And the ones who go to church, well, they would just be the middle classes, right?
yeah.
Because church going is a kind of middle class thing.
Mm. Church going is kind of middle class thing. Well, perhaps in Britain more so. Okay, but I don't know. I don't know about. I really don't know how to answer that question one way
You
or the
come from a
other in
Catholic
Australia.
background, you say.
Oh, a little bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I found the other kids seemed much more middle class than me,
Hmm.
and I didn't like them actually.
Oh,
Um, they were very smug and superior to me. Maybe that's where I picked it up. But so the funny thing there is, I did not enjoy my time, quote unquote, in Catholicism, and I'm about sincerity. So I could not say I was ever in Catholicism in my heart of hearts.
well,
But
it's
I
a cultural thing,
tried for a
isn't
while
it?
with a school there. Sorry.
I think Catholicism is more a cultural affiliation than a genuine belief. It's like
Maybe you
I'm
have a
Catholic
point
because
there.
my
They
my
wouldn't like to
parents.
see it that way, but you have a point. Again, my adult experience of Catholicism was strictly cultural. At least that's how I saw it at the time.
Hmm. Hmm.
I will say though that my experience of religious music, religious classical music, particularly,
Hmm.
I really don't have much time for Hillsong. um, no offense to anyone, but yeah.
For what?
So
For For what song?
for Hillsong, the sort of the evangelisty sort of, rock songs, pop songs for
Oh,
Christ, all
oh,
that
right,
stuff.
right.
I like the classics. I like the classics
Yeah,
when it comes
yeah.
to
The
religious music.
motets and choral
Motets,
music and that
of
kind of
course.
thing. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Choral and symphony is where it really starts to be magical as well, because you get the best of many worlds.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so I've
Yeah,
sung
but it was
in like,
sponsored by the king. I mean, the
oh, okay, this is
superiority
interesting.
of European music was because, the king had to sponsor all these, beautiful churches to get the people to come
Well,
in.
the king, the nobility largely loved sponsoring music, and that is a very interesting reality. Okay,
Hmm.
so almost all the nobles who sponsored the music are forgotten completely, no matter how important or powerful they were. And the starving artists, and they weren't always starving, but the starving artists are definitely remembered to this day. A lot of them, not all of them, but quite a chunk, right? That tracks to you, right?
Well, yeah. So that I think explains the excellent. I mean, Bach. I mean, his
Bach.
music is it religious?
Bach
No, he was
tried to
just
be more.
very talented. He got a good
I
job.
actually, I actually want to take you up on a point of history here. Bach tried to be more so sponsored by the nobility, but it didn't work. He was mostly financially supported by church positions, not always the one he wanted. Bach struggled to be as respected in his own day as he would have liked, especially as a composer. He was preferred as a keyboard player, actually.
Hmm.
The crazy thing, of course, is that Bach was almost lost to history, and it was the Jewish fellow Mendelssohn, as well as others, of course, who helped to revive him. Beethoven also played the well-tempered clavier a lot and rated it very highly. Beethoven was before Mendelssohn, I believe. Um, but what I'm getting at here is it's all pretty complicated, actually. How there was a transition from being supported by the church more so to being supported by the nobility, right? And being supported by the nobility happened a lot. Like it happened a lot for Mozart, for example. I think anyway. And Mozart was actually bad with money from all sources that I understand it. So Mozart was pretty bad with money, always asking for it from his noble friends and this and that. And I guess Mozart. What should I say here? Mozart, of course, is the quintessential prodigious genius sort of archetype, right, in classical music.
Hmm.
But I also find his work a bit shallow at times. Okay, lacking in certain kinds of emotional depth and certain kinds of creativity. It's very fine music. It's very elegant, generally
He
speaking.
probably used a lot of his old ideas again with only slight
Yes, he did that a
variations. I
lot.
think
He very
Rossini was
definitely did.
accused of doing the same thing, but it was
Rossini would
popular.
have done that as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Rossini was. I actually heard an interesting factoid, very obscure actually, that Beethoven was jealous of the popularity of Rossini. Now, obviously, history has given Beethoven the last laugh there, but it's kind of funny to think about, isn't it? Rossini was almost exclusively a opera composer for a while there. He actually composed piano works in his later life. That's an
Mhm.
interesting fact as well. I'd like to listen to some of them one day. I hear they're good. But
Mhm.
Beethoven, of course, is the quintessential struggling, not starving artist, but struggling artist. The fate and deafness and going deaf and what it was doing to him and thoughts of suicide and strife, but also there's probably no one, and I mean no one, in the pantheon of classical music who is as thunderous in the history and in the level of influence as Beethoven.
Mhm.
So the claim I am making there is specifically that like people love Mozart, people resurrected Bach, but Beethoven was big in his time, big in the minds of lots and lots of composers who are now also famous, very influential in the development of musical harmony and musical progress, shall we say. Like
Mhm.
the invention of new ideas, like really, really powerfully original Beethoven,
Mhm.
particularly late Beethoven. The deafness might have helped him in that regard, which is an
Mhm.
interesting angle to take. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, early Beethoven is much more like slightly rougher around the edges Mozart, and I don't mean that as an insult. Um, but Beethoven ultimately went a lot further in a lot of ways. And Beethoven was supposed to be raised as a prodigy by his abusive father, but he wasn't as good from the start anyway. Isn't that interesting, though, about like the journeys that great men take, right? I'm sure Mozart had his problems, right? He definitely would have. He was a bit sickly, as I understand it. Chopin was very sickly as well, died fairly young. Schubert, too, I think. Schubert is a personal favorite of mine. Sorry, we're just on the topic of music now. Very beautiful soul in Schubert. There's even a bit of liturgical
Well,
music by
apparently
Schubert
his
that I like.
pieces were so hard to play that he couldn't play them himself. That was
Oh,
a joke I heard
that's,
about
that's
Schubert.
no, you're almost right. Schubert was quite a bad pianist, and that's why. So Schubert is not considered the apex of piano difficulty. Far from it. I would actually contend he's harder than he's given credit for, but that's mostly because he would have written awkwardly for the piano because he didn't fully understand it because he wasn't very good at it, right? But I love Schubert's piano works. They're great. Like, to me, they're the equal of Beethoven, pretty much, which is a very
I
strong
prefer
statement.
Schubert to Beethoven, to be honest.
Look, I do too right now, actually. I mean, I make the point about Beethoven's originality and historical significance and influence. And Schubert died in obscurity. He was very lucky to be picked up by history. But I love Schubert. I really do.
Yeah. But I
And
suppose in those
and
days, if you were ambitious, you would want to be, you want the king to pay your wages.
the king.
The height of a musician's ambition, right?
Well, I can't actually think though of many times a king really did sponsor a musician, and they are well remembered. Do you like? Okay, I guess. Well, according to the movie Amadeus, and I'm afraid that's where my knowledge on this particular intersection begins and ends. The what was it? Franz Joseph of Austria or something like that, the emperor had some interactions with Mozart. Okay,
I did watch a movie,
positive.
but that was a while back.
Okay, and that probably helped Mozart's career, and it might have even hurt it in some ways. For all I know, I don't know the actual historical facts very well. I think I actually watched a bit of an Apostolic Majesty discussion of the matter, and as Apostolic Majesty would, he was way more focused on the history than the movie, giving appropriate care to both, of course. But what I guess is part of the problem here is you keep bringing up the king sponsoring the musician, and that's fine. But like I said, it's not actually that common for the king to take such as like. I can think of an interesting example of it. Actually, I've the memory was found. So Wagner became very close with a German king. I think the king of Prussia. I could be misremembering. Bohemia. I don't remember. But a king of Germany, right? Not the king of Germany, but a king of a German state. And they got along famously. Wagner is regarded as one of the most personally difficult personalities in classical music. Of course, now Wagner was an opera specialist, but there is no denying Wagner had a seismic, huge, Beethoven rivaling impact on harmony and again, musical progress, the technology of the ideas used to make the music. Does that sort of make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay, cool. You don't have to understand the ins and outs. I don't understand the ins and outs. Okay, but it's very fair to say that Wagner is like still puzzling and creating arguments about his harmonies to this day. The famous Tristan chord, for example. But anyway, Wagner was good friends with the king, and as you can well imagine, a lot of that was about financial support for Wagner, because Wagner was always on the run from his creditors, and he was always on the run for his political nuisances and all sorts of things. Wagner, what a story. I don't know all of it, of course, but he was an interesting guy. Now mostly remembered for being Hitler's favorite composer and all that junk. He deserves better. Both of them, actually. But I shouldn't say that. Oh, naughty, naughty. Anyway, the funny thing there is getting the blessing of the aristocracy can be a double-edged sword. But certainly it feels pretty good when you get it, I'll imagine.
Yeah, I mean, to be a palace composer, a royal
It's probably part of the problem here is it's too comfortable. And that's why not a whole lot of palace composers, if you will, are historically highly regarded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I suppose you'd have to be the best for, the king to take an interest in
Oh,
you and pay
not the
homage.
best, the most appealing to the king.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
best
Popular then.
is usually not at all known. I mean, it's always an argument, right? It's always a matter of opinion, a matter of historical perspective. Another pretty good example of a difficult man, as far as I know, would be Debussy, a very forward-thinking composer. He was very, very original. The only reason he is not more historic is because not many people knew how to continue the tradition that he kind of started and invented. You could say alongside Ravel. Ravel is I actually think Ravel might be a bit better than Debussy. That's my hot take. But Ravel actually composed less. Ravel was a very obsessive perfectionist, and it shows for good and bad. But anyway, do you want to go further with music, or shall we divert over to something else?
What's your next topic?
Well, good question. What would I pick? I think you don't like the trivial, so I'll try and think of something serious here, or at least substantial. Here's a funny one. Actually, it's a little bit personal with you, Claire. Not in a bad way, but like we are often speaking about communication, choice of words, all of that, right? Is that fair to say? So, you come from a very different background than I. And what I would like is you don't have to be explicit with your personal history, not in any way that you're uncomfortable with. What I would like to do is compare and contrast the environments in which we learned our communication styles and try and figure out why we speak and communicate and to some extent believe the way that we do. Does that sound interesting to you?
Oh, absolutely. I think communications, I mean, there's verbal communication and non-verbal communication,
Most
right?
definitely.
And a lot of verbal communication is understanding your audience. You have to
Yes.
understand what they're capable of understanding and calibrate your, communication according to their ability to understand.
I would tend to agree. I also, by the way, for example, the way that I'm handling this conversation is really I'm just focused on you. The live chat I have been more or less ignoring. In fact, I might change the tab and just have a quick look at them. What are they saying? Anything
Well,
interesting?
there's only two at the moment, and he's a
No?
Christian fanatic. The freak is.
Okay.
So I think maybe the music board the others, and that. Well, I don't know. I'm just I don't. But I'm just sort of making sure you talk about the things that you want to do, and that would be a
well,
better way
I
of getting to
appreciate.
know you than
Well, I appreciate the latitude and I appreciate the generosity. So back to communication, though. That might be a bit more interesting for everyone, and we can make it a bit political as well, because I think as we established, we're both political animals from a young age. So I grew up in Australia, obviously, and when I was younger, I actually had a little bit of disdain for the communication style of my country. It was you were caught between. Well, the part that I didn't like was the sort of casual, not incredibly deeply thinking nature of a lot of Australian communication. My mother complains about this as well, in her own way. I kind of, sort of, didn't really pick up on the level of authenticity that Australian communication sometimes embodies, but also just a lot of it is crass or stupid, or I don't know.
Proletarian,
Perhaps
maybe.
that's one way of putting it. Yeah. In addition to that, the strange. You would have guessed as a child I would be on the side of the bureaucracy, the modern bureaucracy, trying to raise the level of the language and speaking in complicated terms, and trying to bring society to a new level with facts and logic and policy and funding and so forth. But I have found myself on the other side of it, which is an interesting thing I should probably unpack more at some time. Although my family, my immediate family, as in especially my mother and my father. My father is arguably who I get my American accent from. He's got an American background. My father is a pretty intelligent, logical man, and I've had a lot of conversations with him over the years that are pretty in depth on substantive topics, a bit nerdy, right? Things like physics, things like computers, stuff like that. My mother, on the other hand, is also a fairly smart woman. Studied politics actually at university, and also geology. So she knows her science, she knows her politics. She also
Her
knows her sort of
rocks.
literary. Sorry,
And her rocks.
yeah,
You said
her rocks.
geology. Did you say? You did
Well,
say
I,
geology.
yeah, I did say geology, and she does like talking about rocks every now and then. What I meant though was that she actually has an understanding of science in a formal sense. She was educated in the matter, right? Which is not always a very feminine interest, it must be said. Um, she often didn't like the flimsy, how do I put it? Like the stupid, superficial, repetitive, small-minded stuff she would run into. Also the drunkenness, right? Australia has an issue with drunkenness, and the way that people communicate when they're drunk is usually pretty subpar, shall we say. It's only funny from the outside, and I don't even find it that funny, frankly. But where am I going with all this? So part of my maturation has been accepting the Australian style and incorporating it. But another part of my goals, shall we say, is to just raise the level a little bit of the Australian communication style. And you know what? Maybe one day what I will actually do is go over to America or even Europe and help to explain the qualities that Australia has that some of the rest of the world lacks. And it took me a while to really discover what those were. The grass is always greener sometimes,
Could you give an example of the Australian communication style that is
Yeah.
distinctly Australian?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Can I swear?
Go on.
I mean, Australians swear.
I
So here's
know.
a common greeting down at the beach. Oi, cunt! That's it. That's a common greeting.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's
It's crass. It's kind of stupid. It's also like it's kind of funny once you get used to it, actually. But it's also it's all those other things too. Have we frozen or something? Hello, Claire?
on my end. Yes.
Oh,
Did you
and
hear
we're
what I
back.
was saying? I know the screen
No, I
froze a
didn't.
bit.
Yeah, yeah. No, something happened with your end actually this time.
Yes. So, yeah, it's a friendly, jocular thing of, you old rogue, but in an affectionate way,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
right?
Yeah, basically. And look, the British working class is quite similar in many ways. Australia also has a tendency of, speaking of the communication style, right? Australians like complaining quite a bit. We call it whinging, amongst other things.
Mhm.
And Australians would rather complain for a long time than act, and I picked up on that a bit. It's unfortunate. What can you do? Um, to speak in support of Australian modes of communication, though, they do a very good job of cutting through bullshit,
Mhm.
and that is something I really like. It's something that we're better at than Americans or the British.
Can you give an example?
Oh, like it's just all sorts of stuff. Like you know, we don't have time for fancy speeches,
Mhm.
or stuff like that. That's a pretty common Australian attitude. We don't have time for a lot of sort of propaganda and highfalutin language or anything like that. We want a man to stand up and say, "Here's what's what. Go do that." So and so is talking out their ass. We don't care what he says. We're going to ignore him. The boss is crazy. Don't just kid him along, and we'll all be fine. I'll look after you. Okay, that's like a sergeant talking to his men when the
Mhm.
captain is like too much thinking about officer school and not the situation on the ground
Mhm.
or something like that. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I find Americans that they like talking about themselves a lot.
No, yeah,
That
yeah,
is
yeah.
something very noticeable. And I notice English person is like, yeah, they just talk so much, these Americans. They can't
Mm.
stick to the point, and they feel they have to tell you all kinds of things about themselves. And I guess for many, people, it's like there is a subject that, and can you talk about it without, telling us
Without
everything about
telling us an
yourself.
anecdote about your grandpappy or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I get you. I get you. I
Um,
mean, go now. Now, I really should actually turn it over to you. I really would love to hear you speak at length, and I'll try not to interrupt too much about your own communications, cultural background, shall we say?
Well, I mean, I see communication. I mean, ultimately, it's all about I want something. How can I
Mm,
get it from you? And it begins
mm,
from childhood. You cry because you're hungry, you want your nappy changed or whatever it is, you want a toy, you want to be taken to the park or whatever. And so you go on and on. And um and I suppose for children, you might have a parent say, no, no, you can't begin a sentence with I want. It has to be a roundabout way, like, oh, good morning, mum and dad. Isn't it a lovely day? Wouldn't it be nice to go, not take me to the pub, to the park, I should say. So I guess you kind of make these rules, and then
mm.
and the people will try to get round it. And I suppose you have to judge the situation. I was telling you the other day that Mein Kampf has a lot of helpful advice about giving speeches and making sure everybody
Oh,
understands, even the slowest person at the back. Make
mm.
sure they understand. And
Yes, yes.
but I mean, even streaming, there's no. Yes, you can just monologue for 3 hours, but who's going to come and listen to you monologue? Well, sometimes people might, but obviously
Yeah.
they're going to be more engaged if you're having a dialogue, and they're
Of
even more
course.
engaged if you're talking to somebody who hates you and is screaming abuse at you. Internet blood sports, and yeah, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't want to hear a bunch of people agreeing with each other. No, no, no.
No, and that's a bit what the TLC has an issue with. Like, I mean, I throw grenades of debate left, right, and center, right? Uh, but there is a lot of. I hope no one gets really mad about this. There's a lot of slightly dull Christian agreeing. We're having a big old Christian agreement party. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, I think they don't actually agree with each other, but they
Uh,
just don't think it's worth arguing about, and that is the thing.
Maybe.
We would rather argue about. Did you say that word? Does it mean you're a fascist because you said this and you
Oh,
blah blah blah? So we're actually taking the political orthodoxy more seriously. Well, amongst Christians, we just don't want to argue about that. You know, We don't want to talk about the Trinity. We don't want to talk about, and it's like, because it's not worth arguing about, because nobody else takes it seriously, right? So you don't want to talk
Mm.
about it. You only want to talk about stuff that other people think is important. Then they'll listen to you.
Mm.
And you might want to talk about your wonderful holiday, or your latest, it depends on what you want to boast about, I guess, or
Oh,
whatever's on your
perhaps.
mind.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
A
Uh,
boasting, but like I have a very playful attitude with regard to boasting. I try to make it short, sharp, to the point, and then move on.
mm,
Um, I mean, the roundabout polite boast shits most Australians actually. Like I say shits, that means a noise in
mhm,
our vernacular. Um, uh,
mm,
um, Go on though. Like boarding school. You said you went to boarding school, right?
mhm, mhm.
What did that teach you
Um,
about communication?
um, well, I guess I would have to pick up from the people I admired, or whatever the English teacher was complaining about. I mean, one of the more interesting things that I do remember from my education is that the history teacher was complaining about our English more than our English teacher, because I think a lot of the
Interesting.
concepts in the history essays that we had to write required quite complicated modes of expression, using, quite difficult words.
Yeah. I mean,
Did you do history at school?
uh not a lot, not a lot formally speaking. I love history though.
Mhm.
And I could say I studied it quite autodidactically over the years. Um, a bit
Yes,
here,
so,
a bit
so
there.
did I.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's
eventually, you
impossible to
built up a
not get
whole
in. Sorry,
picture.
what do you say?
Well, carry on, please.
Oh, I was just going to say
I,
it's
I,
a.
I wanted you to finish your sentence.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say it's impossible not to build up. Sorry, if you're going to be a political animal, and especially if you're born one, you will take an interest in history now, won't you?
Mm.
You brought up a comment here, and we should engage with our audience at least slightly. Do you think stories or personal anecdotes provide context for the person's validity? I think that's what they say. Or would you
Hmm.
say that actually the story is a desperate attempt to prove something, competency, for example, that isn't there? Huh.
Well, it depends, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody could say, "Oh, I'm so rich. I went on this cruise. I, go, and I've, you would boast about your the luxury goods, and therefore you should listen to me because I'm so rich."
Mm.
It does kind of, I guess you have to read between the lines,
You
and
do.
whether that person is genuine or fake.
Another thing that bothers me, so well, it doesn't bother me a lot. Honestly, I'd like to do it on occasion. Is name dropping. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I mean that's a big one.
Well, you kind of have to do that in
You
politics,
do.
like I know, yeah,
You also need to do it in
but
any
that's
kind
why.
of in public life, shall we say. A bit of name dropping is required. Like, you could just be referencing someone's works and you've never met them, but it sort of happens. It was funny. I think I
Mhm,
mentioned sort of very, very slightly meeting Sargon of Akkad. Like my
mhm.
celebrity experience is pretty dismal. I once saw Sarah Palin at the Mall of America when I was visiting relatives in America from like a distance of 20
Oh,
meters.
wow.
And she was just like in the center signing books, and I didn't talk to her or anything like that. These are
Mhm.
these are about as interesting as my brushes with celebrity I've ever gotten. Um,
Any famous YouTubers that you've met? I
oh,
think, what wasn't, Stephen, what's his name? He got kicked off YouTube.
Stephen.
Molyneux. Did he come to
Oh,
Australia?
I was never particularly interested in Molyneux. I'm not saying he's terrible or anything, but he just seemed a bit. I don't know, not quite as smart as he
Full
wanted
of
to be.
himself.
Yeah, that too. And also, just like the quality of the ideas weren't that great, to be honest with the fellow.
Mm,
It's not like he chose reasonable topics, but it's not like his insight was searing, shall we say?
mhm,
And I say reasonable topics. I'm not saying inspired topics. Um,
mhm,
when it comes to my preferred, like I have a lot more to say about the ideas and the people that I've observed rather than anyone that I've met, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Aidan Paladin, for example?
Aiden.
Paladin.
Aiden what?
Aidan
No,
Paladin.
I haven't.
Oh, okay. So
No, I
she's
haven't heard that.
she's loosely affiliated with the right. You know, she's very
Mm-hmm.
academic. She's very young, also, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Young lady,
Mm-hmm.
um, who does fairly long and detailed videos, or at least likes to, because it can be tough to do the long, detailed videos route, especially these days. But
What's her name again?
would you like me to?
Gillen.
It's spelt a bit funny, so I might actually
Okay.
drop it in the. Well, deal with it. I'll put it in the chat. Why not? Here we go. Like that. And she had a difficult journey in her own way because a lot of people, fight her and weren't taking her seriously. And she had her whole Trump phase, and she left the Trump phenomenon behind a bit. And she used to be like on 4chan. And no offense, but Aidan Paladin is a woman, and she has occasionally gotten a bit hysterical and said too much and all of that. I like her. I think she's smart. She's emotional and smart, which is how a lot of women are. Okay. That's what men love. I personally love a very emotional and very smart woman. That is my jam. Okay. I can't do boring. Okay. But I can't even remember how we got onto this.
Well, I was going to think. I was thinking of an attractive Canadian member of the dissident right, but I can't remember her name. She's
Attractive
blonde,
Canadian.
and
I think of Lauren Southern.
that's her.
That's
Right,
her.
that's the one.
Okay, so she struck me as a bit of a attention grabber, but not again. Like I like substantive ones, like Sargon, for example. Sargon. Sorry, do you want to talk about Lauren Southern more, or should we move to Sargon? 'Cause everyone knows Sargon.
Whatever you want. We can do both if you want.
Oh, we can do both. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know Lauren Southern that well because she never took my interest, but Sargon has maintained my interest quite a bit over the years, if I'm honest. I'm not going to try and say he's the next bloody Aristotle, but he just is very consistent on trying pretty hard intellectually, politically, even morally in his way. And he just doesn't stop. He just has been putting out material for ages and ages. And Sargon and his associates, the Lotus Eaters and maybe a few others, Sargon and his associates are actually a pretty good way of keeping up with the news if you don't want the lefty version. Now, you are getting the righty version with all its biases and problems, but you can at least keep up with the news, right? Do you see what I mean? And I guess with regard to Sargon, he feels like an old friend at this point. I can't help but be gooey about it, right? Parasociality and all that. I didn't meet him the one time. He will never have remembered that one in a million years. But the funny thing I think about Sargon is, I mean, I could actually see him as prime minister one day of Britain. It makes a kind of sense, doesn't it? He's been building his reputation. He's been fighting the political fight. He has been trying to talk about everything from responsibility to the history of Britain, the identity of the people, like all this stuff. And it's like, look, I don't really want Rupert Lowe. He seems like an old man. Maybe he's based. Maybe he's very based. Sure, fine, whatever. But I think Sargon is probably capable of more flexibility, more younger energy. We wouldn't say youthful energy anymore about Carl, but we would certainly say that he's about a good age to be prime minister in 5 years or 10. I wouldn't like much more than 10. Well, I don't know, honestly, but the octogenarians ruling class thing, it's got to go, right? I don't know if the UK has been quite as bad as the American Senate, for example, but yeah, I'm not a fan of super old leadership, as you might tell by my young and ambitious nature. But
Well,
Um,
50s, 60s, that would be all right.
yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so.
Mm-hmm.
And look, Carl's just got a massive amount of relevant experience at this point. He knows what it is to be in the public limelight. He knows what it is to be in the public limelight a lot. And you could make an argument that, like, oh, he was some joker who was a gamer who wanted to complain about Anísia Sarkeesian once upon a time. But we all got to start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty
Well, he did
impressed
join
about the
UKIP.
way. Yeah, he did that for a while. He got the milkshake treatment. And you know what? That's your baptism of fire in politics.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
he knows what that is. So could he be prime minister if he really wanted to be? Yeah, sure. Why not? Like, I know there's all this stuff about procedure and are you a member of the such and such and can you form the party and yada, yada, yada. Look, forget it. Forget it. Look, Trump, a good thing about Trump and perhaps the American presidential system is you can just come out of nowhere and say, I'm running for president, ladies and gentlemen. And that's that.
Mm-hmm.
There's something nice about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else do I have to say? We can leave Sargon for now. I can't actually, because like one of Sargon's weaknesses is not like super original or anything.
Mm.
Um, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, yeah. I sort of associated him as being liberal and then moving over to UKIP. I mean, if anybody wanted
Well, he's gone even further than
history of,
UKIP in certain ways. Sorry. What did you say?
well, he was well, he started off liberal and then he moved over to UKIP. So
That,
that's his, and I'm sure he will be staying vaguely on the dissident right.
yeah,
Are there
he's
any
pretty
British
affiliated, if not
YouTubers you can
core.
think of?
Sorry,
Sorry, are there
sorry.
any British YouTubers you can think of
Oh yeah.
apart
Well,
from?
obviously, academic agent is like my guy. Very much more capable of originality. Uh,
But he hasn't proposed anything.
Well, there are forms of originality. He's bad at proposing solutions, right? But in terms of wandering around the questions and the ideas, he's pretty good at that. Would you say?
Yes, so he collects a whole bunch of kind of middle class listeners, and in the
Yeah.
meantime, he won't talk about anything radical. He
No.
knows who I am. He knows about it, but he won't talk about it. Probably because
Uh,
he's instructed not to talk about it by the powers that be. And
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you're not really being you're being more a YouTuber deriving an income than being a political activist if you just stay off certain topics. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. I know academic agent pretty like parasocially, obviously, but I know him pretty well at this point. Okay.
Mhm.
I know some of the deep lore. In fact, deep lore is an ironic phrase to use because one of his popular streams, well, popular, one of his streams is a thing called the deepest lore, as I'm sure you know,
Mhm.
right? And it's just about all sorts of stuff, like cultural things, political things, random ideas he gets in his brain. A lot of them, well, some of them really don't work out. There was this hilarious fiasco where he was trying to make a deepest lore on the ultimate undead roster, like a video game like brain thing where it's like saying, okay, so you have the skeletons and you have like the vampires and you have like the werewolves are optional and all this massive autistic crazy shit. And his stream kept like going offline. And it was just a giant fiasco, man. But it was
Mhm.
funny. I was there for that one.
Mhm.
Um, what I'm trying to get across though is like he's a fun character to follow. At least I find him to be as such. I mean, I've got more of the video games thing with him, and he's a big gamer.
Mhm.
I also enjoy the people he has conversations with. He does pick him pretty well. Not always, but well. And the art is not that he picks people who are completely on his side. The art of it is he chooses people that help to create a good conversation to listen to.
Oh, who are you thinking of?
I mean, a good example would be who do I really want to pick out as one of his best? Well, he talks to Morgoth. Morgoth's pretty good. He talks to Caleb, and that has actually been interesting.
Hmm.
He talks to Scrump and Evelyn, and that was actually how I got into looking at Scrump and Evelyn. They do really good, deep policy breakdowns and discussions in very brutally based terms of the nature of the establishment, its bureaucracy, its funding, its this and that. You know, They were a pretty good find. He'll talk to not. He doesn't talk often to Dave the Distributist. He'll talk about Dave the Distributist. I think they're a bit distant. Talks to Sargon from time to time, obviously. He talks to. Do you remember John D?
Oh
He's
yes,
not a
yes,
part of the
he's
scene anymore.
the gay one.
The gay one, the very gay one, who really had problems with women, as I understand it. And John D was very bitter gay. Let's be frank, but he was very clever bitter gay. All right. Um, and that would lead to interesting exchanges. And often the best internet banter comes from a bit of, as we know, rough and tumble, a bit of, veiled insults and a bit of cheeky comebacks and all that. And we got that with John D and Academic Agent. I feel like there's a few really good ones that I've completely forgotten about. But that's neither here nor there. Another thing I like how that Academic Agent does is he tries to support the new guys. He will bring in total strangers every now and then. In fact, way back in the day, like more around 2016, 2017, that sort of thing, he used to have conversations with essentially random people. When he was more like economics and Austrian monetary theory or whatever it is, libertarian type stuff, all of that. And he usually used to argue about communism and socialism and that with them. That was a way back era. And let me tell you, if I thought that I was going to one day listen to Academic Agent for hours and hours over years, multiple years, when I saw his channel back then in the 2016 and 17 sort of era, I would have thought, oh, wow, I must have taken a bad turn there. And maybe I did. But no, I think he's pretty interesting. But like, this is actually the problem here. For all the strengths, for whatever is interesting about the dissident right, it has a ceiling. And that ceiling is, even though you and I, and even the dissident right itself, wants to get past the spectrum, the binary, the left-right thing, they're pretty captured by it too.
Captured by the ceiling?
The limitations of right-wing ways of thinking.
Well, they haven't got a big idea, which is why they cannot get, because nobody seems to want to discuss solutions. It's all about, what the problem is.
It's all complaining.
And I think just resenting anyone who claims to have a solution and then refusing to discuss it, right? Because they don't want to be taken out of their comfort zones. Maybe it's not just a dissident right, that it's just normal people.
Well, I mean, if I had been able to continue, and maybe it's a good thing that I got kicked out of the dissident right eventually, but here's the thing, right? If I had continued my rise on the political, the dissident right or whatever, the basket weaving and leading to the appearing on streams and so on and so forth, right? I would have really tried hard to get the dissident right into action and vision rather than the gripes, the endless gripes, the never-ending complaining. Action is something that I better be careful with what I say here. And that's usually what happens, right? Everyone just starts to say, oh, you got to watch what you say when you're talking about action. Because I'm not one for bloody revolution. And
I actually feel quite comfortable. It's like I'm certainly not asking anyone to take to the streets or anything like that. I'm just
it generally
asking
doesn't
people,
work.
yeah, because they're prepared for you, and that they have more force on their side than you and your disorganized rabble will, and so the only way you can do it is to make arguments, but then you come up against the obstacle of people pretending not to understand and refusing to argue.
Yes.
Right? They refuse to argue about it, or they pretend not to understand, so they don't have to argue about it, so they can ignore their moral imperative.
Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't thinking necessarily moral imperative there, but one of the things that I think has made us a good partnership in conversation is I will admit when I don't understand, and I will also, I'll just flat out ask, tell me, and I will also entertain any hypothetical you put on my plate. Or or something like that. What I'm trying to say also is that even though you are quite set in certain positions that I might try and crowbar you out of. Let's not say tease, um, but we
We
have
have
fun with it.
exactly the same intentions towards each other.
I suppose so. I suppose so. Um, we enjoy the dance and the fun of the conversational experience. I mean, that's all a bit flowery, perhaps, but um, we
I mean, I think
also
we have the same conversational style, I think.
there's a
Just
lot to
the
work
long
with.
conversational style, which is too much for other people.
I mean, we are pretty happy to cut to the point and be cutting, in fact, with what we say,
Yes.
which is fine, fine in good measure, shall we say? Um, I think also I'm pretty good, and this is actually an aspect of the left wing side of my personality, if nothing else. I'm pretty good at empathetically reading people and adapting to the situation. So you are seeing the side of me that you bring out of me, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But I remember how to converse with the left as if I were one of them. Maybe it wouldn't work anymore, actually. But the funny thing is, I'm no longer wholly of the right, nor am I wholly of the left. I am pretty far out into experimental territory, trying to reunify these two sides, as well as
Mhm,
transcend them, as well as take entirely new positions, just completely outside of this horrid spectrum that entraps all of us.
mhm.
But there is no, even though we might want to move past left right, it's my. I don't think I've used this phrase. I've told other people this. I look at left right. It's as if some horrid conspiracy has taken the human soul and very necessary ideas and traits and qualities and people and cut them in half and put a bunch of it over here on the left and a bunch of it over here on the right. And therefore, there will never be a political solution. Does that kind of make sense?
Um, you seem to be describing men and women.
I, funnily enough, I am as well, aren't I?
Yes.
And that tracks also with the fact that the left is more feminine and the right is more masculine.
Hmm.
And the funny fact of the matter is, you're a woman and you identify with the right far more than the left. Again, we want to get past the dichotomy, but that's my impression.
Well, I suppose I prefer facts and logic to, emotions and
Yeah,
opinions.
yeah. Okay,
And
okay.
I see it as a survival strategy. And I find it alarming that so many Western men reject it. And they're on the dissident right, and they say, I don't care about facts and logic,
Hmm.
you know.
You do sound a bit Ben Shapiro right now. I have to tell you that joke.
I
Facts
don't
and
see
logic.
how I sound like Ben Shapiro.
Well,
Please
you
explain.
know the meme about Ben Shapiro and facts and logic, right? Tell me, don't tell me you don't.
Okay, I never listened to him that much. I just thought it
Neither
was
did
pretty
I.
much universal. You know, people who complain about the left complain about them ignoring facts and logic.
Well, let's flip it around. So the problem the left has with the right, I should say, is that according to their facts and their logic, and they get very academic. Like the left has pretty much taken over academia, and they, for better and worse, do a lot with their conquest. Okay, they have been developing academic language in their favored direction. I think that's fair to say. The left has also done a lot of research, perhaps a lot of dubious research, but a lot of research that tends to back them up in their claims and their preferences. Right? Does that follow to your understanding?
Well, the media and academia are indeed dominated by the left. I'm not arguing
Yeah.
against that.
So one of the things that seems to have made the establishment panic was the right started to win debates that they thought were over and done with and had been won by the left. Do you know what I mean?
Can you give an example of such a debate?
That's a pretty good question. Actually, let's go for a big one. The left had more or less become pretty atheist by the time of, let's say, the Four Horsemen. Dawkins, Dennett, the other two. Um, so the left was feeling like, hey, we're finally getting away from superstition. Maybe atheism has a future. Maybe we can build a beautiful society that's atheist and principled and all of this type of thinking, right? I remember it. I even liked it to some extent. But as it turned out, those cranky old Christians and other people too, obviously, the Muslims as well, then the Jews as well, and even the Buddhists, might well have been saying the whole time very, very simple sounding points about no, you need God and spirituality and religion, as part of your society and as part of your own lives to give yourself meaning. You can't just get it with ideas or abstract concepts or whatever. You can't just have a materialist universe, a bunch of abstract ideas, and be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And the right appears to have won that argument. I mean, the left won't admit it, but the left is suffering because they won't admit it, as in the people and the movement itself. Now, the left likes to dabble in a bit of spirituality, I guess, like everything from Wicca to certain versions of paganism. I mean, there's even certain versions of Christianity that are pretty progressive and still sort of acceptable on the left. And certainly the modern left is a religion of sorts. Very, I don't want to say idealistic anymore. They have their grand causes, okay? They have their grand causes. They're never-ending causes with moving goalposts and all of that. It's like they really are trying to redevelop religion without God and without the supernatural. And again, I used to have sympathy for that project, but I've just seen how badly it's gone. And to actually give you your credit on a point that you make to me frequently that I don't always engage with, like, yeah, sure, like there's got to be some kind of bloody moral standard that isn't endless relativism. Are you speaking and not being heard? Because I'm not hearing anything.
I didn't quite know how to respond to that.
Fair enough.
And I was waiting for you to continue.
Oh, okay, fair enough. No, I was leaving it over to you.
Uh-huh.
Anything to say?
Well, I suppose both the left and the right need to be tackled because they don't want a solution. The left just want a continuation of the current system,
In which
and
they're
the right are
advantaged,
just
yeah.
playing the blame game.
Yeah, amongst themselves and with the left as well.
Hmm.
I guess one of the other things that's probably worth saying is like what is either side expecting here at this point? Like total victory, the complete destruction of the other side.
Well,
Like,
I don't know what they're expecting because there's no, kind of leadership. Because okay, if I
no,
were running, um, if I had a big YouTube channel, it would be
no,
24/7 debating society. It's like, right, you
mm,
don't agree with, A, you don't agree with B, have a debate, and
mm,
have, a third person to moderate and just divide yourself into groups of three. And then afterwards, you have to say who thought the third person not participating in the debate will have to say who they thought won and why, not just, oh, I think A won because I agree with A.
mm.
And I think we have to finally discover a way of objectively determining who won the argument and why. And not just, we're more than you or we're in charge and you're not. It has to
Mm.
be, something rational and objective.
Certainly, I have sympathy for what you're saying. I kind of like it, but I also just know that it's also doomed. I mean, not doomed like there's nothing of value you can do with it. No, I really actually mean there will be something valuable you can do with this idea. Truly, truly, truly. But I am a bit of a global thinker on this, and I guess what I
I'm a
mean to
global
say.
thinker.
No, I believe you are. I believe you are. I guess my global thinking is different than yours on this. Well, like rational standards. Shall we actually get into that? The meat and potatoes of that. Give me three. Give me three elements of morality or rationality that you really want to contend as being true. Let's say objectively true, even though I have my trouble with that. But let's say objectively true statements that should hold and should help guide the discussion, debate, whatever you want to call it.
Well, if it were up to me to give a subject, it would be the nature and purpose of religion.
Hmm.
And I'm saying even atheists see the purpose of religion because, a lot of communists regard communism as their religion.
Yeah,
That's
I
how
can
they
see
think.
that.
A lot of liberals think it's their religion. And there is confusion in the Western mind about what really is religion, and they don't want to talk about it either.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, we have a political orthodoxy or not? And if so, what is its name? There's no answer when you ask these questions.
Hmm.
And you think, surely you have a political orthodoxy. Surely it has a name. Surely it has principles. And nobody
Yeah.
wants to answer that.
Do you recall my formula for the four tiers of sort of government or whatever, society, whatever you want to call it?
Please remind me.
So at the very top is sort of the overarching ideas and values and spirit and God and all of that. And then you have a leader, an unambiguous leader, or if you really want to go that route, like a leadership group. Look, it's neither here nor there. This is
A
flexible.
ruling class.
Not a ruling class. Those of merit for a very difficult and serious position. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
Not a born to rule thing, or necessarily a closed class. I don't like that. But
I'm in favor of Republican meritocracy.
yeah, something like that. Honestly, yeah, something like that. In fact, my odd curveball is also that I kind of like a bit of monarchy at this point, just in that there's an unambiguous leader, the very top of the pyramid, who is not meant to be some jerk, but is meant to be absolutely an embodiment of the people, in love with the people, and doing their very, very best from their position.
Trusted and
Trusted is a
competent
good word.
and not corrupt.
Trusted, competent, not corrupt. Taking ownership and responsibility. Now, ownership does not mean everyone's a slave to this person. Okay. But what I mean by ownership is like taking ownership and responsibility of the society in a way that nobody else does for the purposes of helping it.
Governing in the national interest.
Even more, going right down to the individual level of truly loving and helping and enabling the greatness of everyone in the society.
Yes.
Again, that sounds very idealistic, but that's what that role should be.
Yeah, you don't want them to be incompetent, corrupt, and starting World War III.
That as well. And the reason I actually think idealism is such an important part of it is because true. Again, this is me backing you on the moral thing. The correlation between morality and competence is actually very strong now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And as you keep escalating up the moral ladder, the idealism, or whatever you want to call it, idealism has a touch of naivete, you could say, but the idealism or moral beauty. Let's use an interesting just thought of it term. The moral beauty of the individual in question gets so strong that not only are they a good leader, they are the chosen leader of their people. The leader, a leader should be chosen.
It sounds
Truly.
like you're talking about a caliph.
I mean, I'm thinking of the word king, really, but caliph, king, who cares, right?
Well, I mean, a caliph is not a king. That's
Okay.
one of the more important things that even Muslims don't understand, because
Okay.
they were not related. The four rightly guided caliphs of the Rashidun Caliphate were not related to each other, so they weren't king.
Oh, by the way, my concept of king doesn't care about hereditary stuff. Just throwing that out there.
right. So basically, you're Republican because I mean the whole point of being a king is that you have the right to bequeath your leadership position to your
The,
male offspring or male
you
relation.
could, but what I mean, but like I understand that hereditary thing. What I mean by king, though, the reason I use the term is the tradition. Actually, the traditions and spirit of monarchy carry weight and value that is worth drawing upon. Does that track for you?
Um, I'll explain to you why I have a problem with monarchy. Because if you ever
You've
watch,
lived.
there's a 7-minute clip of
Yeah.
Alec Guinness playing Charles the First, um,
Okay.
who well, it was at his trial, and Richard Harris was Oliver Cromwell, and he was presuming to try the king. And he's saying, well,
Mm.
actually, as monarch of England, I am above the law, and I have to be above the law in order to impose the law. And it was logical. It's just that there was no mechanism to remove a king other
Mm.
than through regicide or
Yeah,
exile.
which is one of the great problems, of course. And what I'm saying is, I don't have a definitive political answer that can't lead to conflict. What I'm talking about could easily lead to conflict in a way.
Well, the
Um,
founding fathers thought they had the answer with their
Democracy,
constitutional
well, republic, I
republic.
should say. Yeah,
Well,
republic.
I mean, the point is that a precedent can be removed for
Yeah.
high crimes and misdemeanors. I know it's a
Oh,
vague,
yeah.
but the idea is that don't expect to continue to be president if you're found guilty of
Traitorous
robbery,
behavior.
rape, and murder. You
Yeah,
know,
sure. And like that is part of my argument here. This character, if you will, this king, this leader, it doesn't really matter what you call him. The idea is it's just the best man for the job. There's
the alpha
there.
male.
Oh, you could use the term alpha male. I would go a little more subtle than that, but because again, there's a poetic quality to a truly great leader. You know what I mean, right?
Yes, born to rule and a great leader. I mean, it seems to me that the Americans have it in their founding fathers, or George Washington,
Maybe.
who I think was genuinely a sage, just because of
Hmm.
his farewell speech, which I go on about, and Americans are saying, no, we don't want to do that anymore. He's dead, and we're
Hmm.
doing things differently. But I said, look at what he warned you against doing, and you're just ignoring all his advice. And it's like, yeah, well, so what? Who cares?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
So what I would also suggest is that my concept of a sort of strong moral monarchical figure, it actually has a shelf life. Um,
well,
once
in the
it
sense that all men are mortal.
oh that but also even the position itself in a way, because if we are talking about truly great leadership here, it starts to remove its own necessity, or essentially just the society grows and improves to the point where there's not a lot of governance required anymore. Call it a libertarian utopia, if you will. I'm thinking even higher than that. But what a great society is one that doesn't even need to maintain itself very much. One of true and moral freedom. And when I say moral freedom, I don't mean license. I mean like morality has been achieved to such a strong degree that freedom now reigns quite happily.
You could get to such a society, but you would have to maintain it and
Yeah,
be vigilant, because eventually
I
people will break
suppose.
those rules, and you need to deal with these lawbreakers. And if you
Um,
if you look the other way, then people getting away with things will encourage more people to, you know,
well, I
commit the same
get you. I
offense.
get you. And in a way, we have a precedent and an example for this, which is sort of the high era of European society, right? So it doesn't really matter. Maybe 1800s is a reasonable example. Even
Oh,
the early 1900s.
you're doing this golden age thing, but the thing is,
Well, I'm not over. What I actually, less golden age and more like, so in that era, there were a lot of just understood things about politeness and morality. People just wouldn't go against them. You didn't even really need to enforce them much, if at all. Do you see what I mean? That time is
I
gone,
don't think anything is obvious until it is pointed out again and again and again, and even then,
perhaps.
you're bound to have subversives and dissidents who want to try things their way.
And
So
that's also free
we just
will.
need to keep a lid on things, and I mean that's what law enforcement is about. That's what
Yeah,
the judiciary is about.
yeah, yeah. Again, I'm not talking about like a complete anarchic state. Really, that's not interesting. What I'm getting at is just more and more gentle leadership is another way of putting it, and gentle simply because no coercion or force is required anymore. The
Because
society has
people are
truly
capable of
advanced.
being shamed, but I don't think
Ooh,
culturally,
shamed.
yeah, because that's I mean
Shame is a dangerous weapon.
it's this. It's the stick that comes with the corollary of the carrot.
I
You can't just
suppose.
use one without the. Well, I mean, if you're going to
Again,
do it properly, you have to do both.
I'm not banning shame. What I'm really just trying to get at is be wary of overusing it. That's just all I'm saying. And that's not
Yeah,
even because
because it becomes
shame.
ineffective, and a lot of the dissident right, have been shamed.
Yeah.
They're called names, Nazi, and then
Again.
they overused it so much that Tucker is now the biggest Nazi in America, right?
Well,
And that's why people go Tucker. Well, I don't watch him. I don't care about the things he talks about. You know.
yeah, yeah, no, of course. Hmm. I actually feel we should probably wrap things up a little bit soon. Is that okay by you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We've been talking for nearly 3.5 hours, so
Yeah,
now's
I mean,
time for.
it says something about our rapport and our ability to generate conversation that it just the time flies by.
It must be very late for you.
It
And
is a bit.
thank you. Thank you for coming. And
It's okay.
yes,
Maybe a bit longer gap for the next one, but I hope I'm invited back, and I'd love to come back.
well, when I don't know how to contact you outside, going
Oh,
live and
I
everything.
should
So,
I
so
should give
maybe,
you something for that. Actually,
yeah, maybe you can give me your email in the
there's a
private chat.
private chat right here. I'm just actually going to take care
Yeah.
of this now. So,
Okay.
this is a fine email address to reach me.
Mhm.
You got that?
Yes, I see it now. Great.
Okay,
And
great.
then
Taken
we
care
can
of.
touch base and do it when it suits you. All
That's right.
right.
And the only other thing that I would suggest is I'm happy to have some other people in our party, so to speak, as in other
Great.
people to enlarge the conversation. Um, and
Absolutely.
I leave that up to you who to bring because last time I
Yeah, I
brought
mean, I,
someone,
I did
it
post
was
a
fun.
link.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I did post a link, but nobody joined. I did it several
Uh,
times.
oh well. Oh
Um,
well.
but
Um,
you can invite your friends if you
yeah. Yeah.
like.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
I'd be cool with that and welcome it,
Thank you.
actually.
Thank you.
All right.
Um. All right. So thank you again. And unless there's anything else, I'm happy to call it here.
That's it. Thank you so much for coming and take care and talk to you before too long.
Au
Okay.
revoir.
Okay. Good night.
Bye bye.
Sleep well.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.